Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the January 3rd meeting of the Ann Arbor City Council. If you're able, please rise and join us for a moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Like many of us here, and I'm sure elsewhere, joining us for our moment of silence, I will be thinking about the life, legacy, and work of a lion among us, Jim Toy. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Would our clerk please call the roll of council?
Mayor Taylor.
Yes. I'm green and plugged in. Thank you. A meeting occurs and it's on CTN. Has it really occurred? And it's not on CTN. Has it occurred? Pardon?
I think we might be on CTN. I think the Zoom folks can hear that.
Ah.
Mayor, if you can hear me, we're not hearing anything on Zoom.
We're working to find out why that is. But we can. But I can hear you. All right.
Jackie, they started, yeah.
I'm not hearing anything on Zoom.
How about now?
There we go. Thank you.
So,
Thank you.
Ms. Boger, are we audible?
We are now, yes.
Excellent. We have, will our clerk please call the roll of council?
Councilmember Hayner?
He is not in the chambers.
Absent. Councilmember Dish?
Here.
Councilmember Griswold?
Here.
Councilmember Song?
Councilmember Song is not in chambers.
Absent. Councilmember Grand?
Here.
Councilmember Radina?
Here.
Mayor Taylor?
Here.
Councilmember Iyer?
Here.
Councilmember Nelson?
Here.
Councilmember Briggs?
Here.
Councilmember Romlawi?
Present.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. May I have a motion, please, to approve the agenda? Moved by Councilmember Iyer, second by Councilmember Grand. Discussion of the agenda. Councilmember Griswold.
I would like to add the proposed agenda item, resolution in support of virtual meetings.
Is there a second? Second by Councilmember Iyer. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? That agenda amendment is approved. Further discussion, let us place it. Do you have a preference where it goes, Councilmember?
No.
I don't think anyone is here holding on that, if I recollect, so let's put it at DC 4, if that's all right. Unless Mr. Frost is holding for that. Is that possible? He's probably here for the other one too, so let's move on. All in favor of the agenda as amended? All opposed? The agenda is approved. Do we have communications today from our city administrator, Mr. Mahoney?
No, Mayor, we don't.
Thank you. We now have one introduction today from our Independent Community Police Oversight Commission, our chair, Dr. Jackson. Dr. Jackson, you have the con.
Good evening, everyone, and Happy New Year. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Lisa Jackson, and I'm the chair of the Independent Community Police Oversight Commission. As we enter this new year, I'd like to once again reiterate the optimism that our commission has for Ann Arbor to become a city where all people can both be safe and feel safe. Over the past year, we've seen so much enthusiasm for positive change at every level, and we're confident that 2022 will see our city move even further towards our goals. One of the biggest opportunities in 2021 was the resolution passed by council instructing the city administrator's office to create a report detailing how the city could create an unarmed response plan to handle crises in which armed officers might not be needed, or even worse, where an armed response would be detrimental. While the report that was produced in late December chose not to make any strong prescriptions on how best to move forward, it does provide important background on at least a couple of issues that our commission feels are integral to the topic of unarmed response. For example, it was noted that the backup for an unarmed response, crisis response program should not be armed police officers, but it should be a better funded, better equipped, unarmed crisis response program. With that, we can certainly agree. With that said, there were a couple of inaccuracies within the report that I just want to bring to council's attention to make sure we're all on the same page. You might recall that at the last city council meeting, I mentioned how ICPOC was not consulted in the development of a plan. And so there's reference to a series of meetings in which we were included, which kind of misrepresents what happened. We were invited to one meeting by the county, which a presentation was given to us. We were not asked for any input by the city or the county. And on November 10th and December 17th, our input was not solicited at all. There's also a highlighted quote from the executive coordinator of the Whitebird Clinic stating the critical role of the police. However, in conversation with the executive director of Cahoots, which is actually the unarmed response program that was developed out of the Whitebird Clinic, they've indicated that they rely on the police from 1% to 0.5% of their over 24,000 annual calls, but would like to have their clients interact with armed police even less often. And so we're happy to help make distinctions between things like, as we get in the weeds, what's the difference between the Whitebird Clinic and Cahoots? But it's a clear example of where our expertise would have been helpful. And as I mentioned before, it was certainly not employed despite being offered on multiple occasions throughout this process. Given those concerns, you might be wondering how I can be optimistic about the future. Last month, after detailing our efforts to collaborate with the city administrator's office, I spoke here about the need for council to more directly involve itself in changing the culture in the city. I asked council to help hold city agencies accountable to doing their work with us. Council member Lynn Song stepped up and did just that. After our meeting last December, council member Song set up a meeting with me, our Vice Chair Francis Todoro Hargreaves, City Administrator Mahoney, and John Fournier and herself to discuss the City Administrator's progress on the report. There had not been much progress made, but the report was created in that weekend, and we'd like to thank her for being an advocate for us and for taking our work seriously. I'd also like to thank City Administrator Mahoney for his part in this progress. and certainly to say that our commission is looking forward to working with you going forward. Our commission is reviewing this unarmed response sort of draft now, and we'll have a robust discussion at our meeting later this month. We will no doubt come out with some suggestions, and if there is going to be a plan going forward, we certainly look forward to collaborating with the city. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We now come to public comment reserve time. Public comment reserve time is an opportunity for members of the public to speak to council and community about matters of municipal interest. To speak at public comment reserve time, one needs to have signed up in advance. In light of the bifurcated nature of our proceeding, we are going to have two sets of public commentators. The first set, folks who are in-house. The second, folks who are on Zoom. With respect to folks who are here in-house, you'll have 3 minutes. Please, when I call your name, please come up to the podium. You will have 3 minutes in which to speak, so please pay close attention to the time. The time clock will expire at 3 minutes, after which your time has expired. Our first speaker today is Henry Herskovitz.
Good evening. Happy New Year to all. The anti-war protesters of the 60s were fond of chanting, "Power corrupts, absolute power corrupts absolutely." Nowhere was heard of Jewish power corrupting. Not surprising, given the political and ethno-religious identity of those leading the anti-war movement. The plaintiffs in the lawsuit in which Mayor Taylor and I are listed as defendants concedes a claim by the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals that our anti-Israel views are protected by the First Amendment. But they claim our signs like "Jewish power corrupts" conveys hatred against Jews. That Jewish power exists should not surprise anyone. Here is a book by the same name written by J.J. Goldberg. That Jews, as 2% of Americans, hold power is not necessarily a bad thing. It becomes bad, however, when that power is used to control free speech and works against the interests of the United States. When our group wished to run an advertisement in the Ann Arbor Observer, a powerful member of the Jewish community asked editor John Hilton not to run our ad. Hilton complied, and we were denied the opportunity to convey our message. The Jewish Community Relations Council of Detroit likewise pressured Adams Outdoor Advertising to cancel our billboard message, "America First, not Israel." Small potatoes, you might think. Here's a more persuasive example. On June 8, 1967, the United States ship Liberty was attacked by the Jewish state in international waters. The attack lasted longer than Pearl Harbor. During the attack, American jets from the Sixth Fleet took off to save the Liberty, but they received stand-down orders from President Lyndon Johnson. Yielding to pressure from Jews in his cabinet, Johnson did not want to, quote, embarrass our supposed ally, but in our view, committed treason. And the responsibility for 34 dead U.S. sailors remains on his hands. This example represents the corrosive influence Jews wield in the United States. There are many other examples. We'd be happy to present them to you. We stand by our sign, "Jewish power corrupts." Thank you.
30 seconds.
Our next speaker is Mojan Savabi Asafani.
Hello, can you hear me? Greetings, Ann Arbor. It's been a rough year, and it'll be harder. I, Dr. Mojgan Savabi Asfahani, formally announce that I'm running for Ann Arbor City Council in Ward 4. I am running for our human rights, for our environmental rights, against a city council that is rotten with racism, a city council that is racist to the bone against Palestinian people. The American political system has been hijacked by money from the White House down to this outhouse. This city council, washed into power by mountains of campaign contributions with God only knows what kinds of strings attached. We don't know what strings are attached to those contribution dollars, but we do know we have no public housing, no clean water, and no $15 minimum wage in a city that calls itself progressive. It's not the first time that American officials have called themselves progressive while they pollute the land with racism and deprive people of the most basic human rights. The right to public health care, to a public cleanup of our poisoned waters, to public housing, public university education, a $15 an hour minimum wage, adequate mass transit, and the labor unions we need to protect those rights. The most consistent, unanimous policies of Ann Arbor City Council are to stonewall any resolution against apartheid Israel and to stonewall any city cleanup of our waters, which are still poisoned by Gelman dioxin contamination, and the poisoning continues to grow. Why does this city council fill the street with luxury housing while doing nothing about public housing? Why does this city council fill the streets with bike paths without the kind of massive public transportation expansion that's necessary to replace cars and to allow bikers some safety? Why does this city council shoot off its mouth about Gelman plume without ever putting shovels in the ground to clean it up? Why
30
doesn't
seconds.
this city council ever campaign for a $15 minimum wage or for the major expansion of our union memberships that we do need? I tell you why. Because strong unions would empower us to throw out this racist, toxic city
Time.
council and finally get us a government that defends basic human
you.
rights. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Blaine Coleman.
The Ann Arbor City Council, ever since its January 10th, 1984 meeting, has had a consistent and savagely racist foreign policy of its own. Ever since that date, which you can read about in the Ann Arbor News, January 10th, 1984, Ann Arbor News, front page, ever since that date, the Ann Arbor City Council has forcefully blocked any resolution that would cut off aid to the apartheid state of Israel. And for the last 20 years, standing in this city council, I have seen this Ann Arbor City Council continue with that savagely racist policy of forcefully blocking any resolution that would cut off military aid to the apartheid state of Israel. I have seen this city council virtually unanimously block even the slightest resolution that might hint at protection for Palestinian human rights. This is a savagely racist city council. Has been since January 1984, still is. And the wonder of it is that virtually everyone on this city council will pretend fraudulently to be progressive. How in the hell are you going to be progressive when you're doing so much to murder the Palestinian people? How do you look at yourself in the mirror, and how do you sleep at night? I don't think you're even a human being if you can be capable of such sustained, savage racism against the Palestinian people. How do Holocausts happen? Just like this. Just like this. Even the slightest resolution to just cut off military aid to Israel, this city council runs from, blocks with all its might. What do you have to say for yourselves? What? What do you have to say for yourselves? This savagely racist Ann Arbor City Council. Do they?
Thank you.
You have nothing to say because you're racist.
We now come to our set of public commentators who are joining us remotely to speak at public comment general time. Please enter the number, reserve time remotely. Please enter the number on your screen, 877-853-5247. 877-853-5247. Once you're connected, please enter meeting ID 942-1273-2148. 912-1273-2148. Once you're connected, please enter *9 to indicate that you wish to speak. When it is your turn to speak, our clerk will identify you by the last 3 digits of your telephone number. You will have 3 minutes in which to speak, so please pay close attention to the time. Our clerk will notify you when 30 seconds are remaining and when your time has expired. When your time has expired, please conclude your remarks and cede the floor. Our next speaker is Glenn Nelson.
Mr. Nelson, phone number 733. Go ahead and speak.
I am speaking as a representative of Citizens for Mental Health and Public Safety. We applaud Council for initiating the development of an unarmed response program. We compliment the City Administrator for preparing a constructive report. I will address just one of several issues our citizens group raised with you, increasing the awareness of residents as to the appropriate telephone number to call for a crisis response, rather than increasing the confusion of residents. Let's assume the time is August of 2022. We have multiple 24/7 crisis response numbers available to us: 911, 211, 734-544-3050, and 988. The last one has become easier to remember because of a national launch with considerable publicity. We strongly recommend that your proposed program includes a public education campaign to inform residents of when each number is most appropriate. And since we all make mistakes, we also strongly recommend your proposed program includes the necessary collaboration so the caller is referred to the appropriate service regardless of which number was called, with the preference for an unarmed response. The above is a big task that is enough for you to tackle. We strongly recommend you do not add additional crisis response numbers. However, if you choose to do this, the task remains in part the same, except that now you would need to educate residents on which of 5 or 6 numbers they should call and construct a network linking 5 or 6 access points. In addition, you would need to educate residents of whether they should or should not be calling the Ann Arbor numbers. For example, are these numbers only for residents of the city, only for residents of the Ann Arbor Public Schools District, or only for people whose address includes Ann Arbor? And finally, the communication network would need to quickly refer people who call the wrong geographically assigned numbers to the appropriate numbers. We believe such a system is doomed to be a mess from the viewpoint of residents in crisis. Summarizing, We strongly
30 seconds.
recommend you focus on making the current system of crisis response numbers plus the forthcoming 988 work well rather than add more numbers. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Michelle Hughes.
Michelle Hughes, phone number 677.
Hi, this is Michelle Hughes. I called in to talk about an ordinance change, but first I wanted to talk about the unarmed response memo as well. There was a situation I wanted to talk about why it's important to have an unarmed crisis response situation because so I'm on a message board for local transgender people, and over New Year's Eve, there was a message posted on there saying, hey, my friend is having a mental health crisis right now, I think. I haven't been able to call her. Is someone able to go check up on her in Ypsilanti? And nobody was able to respond because we're not 24/7 crisis responders. And the only person who was able to respond to that message said, oh, I don't have transportation. And yet, no one would have ever considered calling 911 to do a wellness check because you do not send police to the house of a transgender person because it's just too dangerous to the transgender person. Plus, once a police officer gets there, the only thing that the trans person is going to be thinking of is how to get the police away from them as quickly as possible. So they're not going to say that they need help. They're going to say, oh, they're perfectly fine in order to make that person leave. So that's why we need an unarmed response in which people can be sure that that a person will be met with help and not with police, because marginalized communities need to feel safe asking for help. And so that's why I really like that the report talked about that an unarmed response program should not be housed under the police department. I'm a little concerned about how it relies heavily on the sheriff department's relationship with community mental health, because I've heard from Dr. Jackson of the ICPOC that when community mental health gets calls, they could choose to respond to them without a police backup, but they always have chosen to respond to them with a police backup, and I think that's a very dangerous choice because it will make people hesitant to call for help, and it will make people hesitant to respond appropriately to offers of help because they'll be just trying to get the police away from them. Okay, I used up all my time talking about that, so thank you very much, and keep that in mind in the future.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Thomas Stolberg.
Mr. Stolberg, phone number 534. Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Hello, this is Tom Stolberg calling from Lower Town in Ann Arbor. On DC1, I want to thank Councilmember Griswold for her diligent efforts in this area of public safety. And on MC1, as a former chair of the HDC, I want to comment on an excellent candidate for appointment to the Historic District Commission, Beverly Willis. She's been active in the Washtenaw County Historical Society, Ann Arbor Historical Foundation, and the African American Culture and Historical Museum of Washtenaw County. Other members of the local preservation and historical community were happy to hear that she was nominated. As an aside, I want to plug the museum, which is now open for visitors on weekends and weekend afternoons. This is a local treasure that only recently opened its physical doors to the public, but has an amazing wealth of material online at aachm.org. Later tonight, some people are going to tell you how excited they are about some best practices in planning policy. I think I'll put some perspective to that. We haven't done very well over the last several years under Mayor Taylor in applying best practices to our planning and zoning decisions. Obviously, the inappropriate approval of Morningside's Lower Town development was not a best practice. That required cooperation from the mayor and his former lockstep city council majority with the developer to avoid a supermajority vote and to pass a convoluted PUD in disguise that mimicked a PUD in every way except allowing the avoidance of nearly $9 million of affordable housing. That was not a best practice. Similarly, the support from the mayor and his allies for an inappropriate rezoning on East Summit Street, which included the exact type of conditional zoning that the courts frown upon, was not a best practice. Again, they preferred an inappropriate upzoning over affordable housing money. But the mayor was then in the minority and appropriately outvoted, resulting in money for the Affordable Housing Fund that he fought against. Also, the effective elimination of single-family zoning through an aggressive revision to the ADU ordinance was not a best practice. When that first came up, it was voted down because though there was technically sufficient notice for an ordinance revision, publishing it in the Washtenaw County Legal News, the majority on council at that time found it not to be best practices, especially regarding the 20,000 residences who were impacted. Outside experts agreed with that. 2 years later, the mayor and his new majority passed that with even more packed into the ordinance revision and a refusal to give direct notice to the 20,000 impacted residents.
30
A
seconds.
citizen who was used in the promotional video for the ordinance revision was even shocked to find out what was added into the revisions. If he didn't know, what about the 20,000 impacted residents? They don't know. That's not best practices. A common thread to these less than best practices is a dismissal, a demonization, and a reduction of public participation. We have not been applying best practices. At best, we have been finding loopholes for justification to avoid best practices.
Time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker, listed Ann Bannister, has withdrawn from public comment. And so our next speaker is Kathleen Murphy.
Ms. Murphy, phone number 245. Yep, go ahead.
Good evening, Mayor Taylor, City Council members, and Ann Arborites. I'm Kathleen Murphy. I live at 315 Linda Vista Street in Ward 5, and I'd like to speak in support of a feasibility study of a MUNI being a not-for-profit municipal electric utility that the organization Ann Arbor for Public Power, or A2P2, and others have championed. I speak for A2P2 when I say that we've been very pleased that the Energy Commission forwarded to you their recommendation to, quote, authorize a municipal utility feasibility study and initiate work towards creation of a municipal sustainable energy utility, or SEU, unquote. And we sincerely thank the Energy Commission. Now we want to work with you, City Council members, to bring these things about. A2P2 has studied the legal context for a MUNI, a municipal electric utility. It's clear that we're granted the right to form a MUNI by the Michigan State Constitution and by Ann Arbor City Charter. We've also had more than 1,200 Ann Arbor residents sign a petition supporting a feasibility study of a MUNI done by an expert consultant so we can better assess if a MUNI would be possible in Ann Arbor. A MUNI would do many things. It would benefit Ann Arbor residents with better service than we get from DTE. It would work supportively with the planned Sustainable Energy Utility, or SEU, which is a positive step in the right direction, but currently would be backed up by DTE. A MUNI would seek 100% renewable energy sources by 2030, the city's goal of net neutrality. And a MUNI would replace DTE, which gets 70% of its energy from fossil fuels, with plans for reaching net neutrality not until 2050. As a group, Ann Arbor for Public Power is driven by its concerns for addressing the climate crisis and concerns that residents need to control, manage, and build their own electric utility to be more reliable, efficient, affordable, and environmentally responsible than our current investor-owned utility, DTE. We invite all interested persons to work with us. As we've studied this for over a year while we worked with the Energy Commissioners, we would be glad to help, if we could, in seeing this brought forward by you, City Council members. We look forward to the resolution being presented and discussed at the next City Council meeting. Thank you for this opportunity to speak.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Gus Teschke.
Mr. Teske, phone number 661.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, wonderful. Hi, my name is Gus Teschke, and I'm also a member of Ann Arbor for Public Power. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. Ann Arbor for Public Power formed in response to DTE's repeated failures to provide reliable electric service for Ann Arbor, and also because DTE is too slow in moving to renewable energy during the climate emergency. We believe that building a public electric utility is the solution to these problems, and we have found strong public support for a feasibility study so we can get a better look. We've been circulating a petition in support of a study, and we have more than 1,200 signatures. And I'm pretty sure we can get a lot more. Since public electric utilities are publicly owned and not for profit, they respond to the public. Many people know how important that is after this summer's long power failures. Ann Arbor's response to climate change requires a rapid shift to zero carbon emissions, and a public power utility can respond to the challenge of providing 100% zero carbon electricity for Ann Arbor. Meanwhile, DTE pursues shareholder profits, defers infrastructure investment, and plans to continue to rely on fossil fuels at least through 2050. They're a monopoly, and they act like it. I'd like to make 3 quick points. First, public utilities are legal. The state constitution authorizes us to build one. So do state laws, so does the city charter. Ann Arbor for Public Power commissioned a legal study that shows that we have a clear path. A public utility requires no new state legislation, unlike some alternatives. Second, public utilities are well established. There are 2,000 communities across the U.S. that get electricity from public power, including major cities such as Austin, Nashville, Los Angeles, Seattle, small towns, and the Navajo Nation. And there are 40 municipalities in Michigan, such as Traverse City, Holland, Lansing, and Chelsea. Third, public utilities are environmentally responsible. From 2005 to 2017, public power utilities reduced CO2 emissions by 33%, far outpacing private utilities. We could, okay. DT, on the other hand, is the third dirtiest major utility in the country by CO2 emission. So Ann Arbor cannot get to its goal of 100% renewable energy by 2030 with DTE providing our electricity. Ann Arbor for Public Power urges City Council to fund a feasibility study for a public electric utility so Ann Arborites can see a proposal of what we would build and get an estimate of its cost. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Sean Higgins.
Mr. Higgins, phone number 041.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi, my name is Sean Higgins from Ward 4. I'm also involved in Ann Arbor for Public Power. I've heard some concern from other residents about the potential reliability or capacity for our city to service and provide a municipal utility, and I sort of want to speak to those concerns. With, a fairly recent study found that on average across the country, customers that have power provided from public utilities are likely without power for on average about 74 minutes of the year, whereas customers of private utilities are without power for an average of 136 minutes a year. Now, customers here in Ann Arbor and other customers of DTE were without power, many for, much longer than that amount of time this year due to storms. Public utilities are also on average pretty significantly more affordable, and by providing power to the entire city through ownership of the distribution of electricity, they're sort of inherently, universal programs. There are a lot of other cities and towns, such as Holland, Lansing, in Michigan, that have such public utilities that our government can communicate with and learn from to achieve an electric utility that returns positive income to the city through payments in lieu of taxes. Like, Holland's municipal utility gives over $6 million a year towards the city's budget. In the short term, over the next, several years, it will be a fight and potentially expensive legal battle, but in the long term, it can produce great value for the city and get us off of DTE, which not only causes reliability problems and pumps fossil fuels into the atmosphere, but also uses the money that we as consumers give to them to fund lobbying efforts to stop environmental policy at multiple levels of government. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Ralph McKee.
Mr. McKee?
Hello, this is Ralph McKee. Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
This is Ralph McKee, 5th Ward. I read with interest the December 30 M Live article entitled, "Why is City Government a Mess?" One quote jumped out. Councilmember Grand, obviously referring to the 4 council members not aligned with her, said, "I really do wish they could learn to count sometimes. It would make our meetings go faster." This is classic Julie Grand. It's snarky and it shows a fundamental disdain for democratic process at the council table. Heck, it's reminiscent of Mitch McConnell. But what's worse is not so obvious. Looked at carefully, it shows lack of independence of the 7-member majority. Let's go back a year. We had 5 newly elected council members who all raised lots of campaign money, put out lots of mailers, and put forward the theme that they would be independent thinkers. I didn't support their election, but I took them at their word and hoped for the best. At the October 19, 2020 meeting, just before they started, Julie Grand announced that going forward, council members could work together or she would be a seek and destroy missile. Again, classic Julie. Oppose her at your risk. I still hope that the new council members wouldn't share her attitude and would be independent. A year and 450 votes later, according to Councilmember Nelson's newsletter, the 7 has voted as a block 420 times. The math, Councilmember Grand, is 93.6%, or roughly 14 of 15 votes. Council members Grand, Song, and Iyer voted the same way more than 440 times, or 98%. Now I know many of those vote unanimous votes, so the percentage would be lower, and the other 4 often vote as a block too. But I can recall hardly any significant controversial votes, for example, on whether to provide protections requested by Mr. Guajardo, where the 7 did not vote as a block. Mitch McConnell would be impressed. What really bothers me is this. Grant's comment makes clear that she believes that no matter what colleagues not aligned with her say at the council table, the 7 will vote as a block anyway. Yesterday on social media, Councilmember Verdina loudly touted his independence. Well, Travis, your 3rd Ward colleague says she doesn't believe you. She believes you will vote with her, even if a colleague provides facts and makes a great argument supporting a different policy outcome or suggests a compromise. And you know what? She's right. This is truly sad. It means our local politics has devolved similarly to the national political scene, where party loyalty is of the utmost importance. Good policy and good government be damned. I know several of you dream of shorter meetings with little debate and unanimous votes. Be careful what you wish for. You just might get it. And that would be even sadder. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there communications today from council? I've got Councilmember Redina. Councilmember Redina has indicated that he wishes to speak some words with respect to Mr. Toy. My understanding is that those words will extend beyond the 2 minutes with council's acquiescence. Does anyone have any objection to an additional minute or so? I'll take that as a universal okay. Councilmember Redina.
Thank you. As many of you already know, our community lost a truly great and legendary person this weekend. On New Year's Day, our beloved Jim Toy passed away peacefully at the age of 91. Most people who are lucky to live into their 90s have experienced amazing lives. But Jim wasn't satisfied to simply live a great life for himself. He dedicated nearly all of his time with us to ensuring that others could live great lives as well, to live them openly, safely as our true selves, surrounded by friends and unwavering love. His mark on our community is indelible, and his influence on the LGBTQ civil rights movement immeasurable. Jim once said that he was, quote, committed to making as much trouble as I can create to maintain justice. He didn't disappoint. If I were to take time to list all that he accomplished over his 9 decades, we could probably be here all night. But near and dear to my heart were his decades of work with the Washington Rainbow Action Project, which was renamed the Jim Toy Community Center in 2010. It was an immense personal honor to serve alongside him and to learn from him in the years that I led the center that bears his name. For those of you who knew Jim, you know that he was a warrior for equality, an unrelenting activist, a man of faith and moral purpose. He never wavered in his commitment to human rights, never faltered when facing down the powerful, and never compromised in his belief that every person had equal value. But you also know that he was intensely humble. He often told us he didn't deserve the recognitions he received, softly protested the picture of him that hung on the community center's wall, and even insisted that the center shouldn't have been renamed in his honor in the first place. But what I will personally remember most about Jim is how he made me feel. He was a kind and thoughtful leader, a wise mentor, and a loyal friend. That wasn't just my experience with him, it was everyone's. People share their stories about Jim with me all the time. He had a special ability to make all of us feel like we were the center of his universe. He saw us, he heard us, he accepted us and loved us exactly as we were, and we were all his family. So like many in our community, I am heartbroken by this loss. But I cannot express how lucky I feel to have known him for as long as I did, and to have shared even a moment of my life with this truly incredible man. Finally, Jim often said, we are climbing this mountain of justice hand in hand. So as we look forward into a world without one of the best people that I have ever known, I cannot think of a better way to honor his legacy than for all of us to commit to continue climbing that mountain together, to continue making as much trouble as possible to create and maintain justice. So on behalf of Ann Arbor, goodbye, Jim. Thank you for everything, and we will love you always. Thank you.
Further communication from council. Councilmember Grant.
Thank you, Travis. I really appreciate. And can everyone hear me? Okay. Yeah, your work is really a testament to his legacy, and I'm honored to serve with you. I do want to wish a happy retirement to Colin Smith. Hopefully we'll be able to celebrate in person in the near future, but we are all better off in terms of our quality of life because of his contributions to our city, and I truly thank him for his service. In 2016, Ann Arbor voters elected to amend the charter to double the terms of council members to 4 years. I was a strong proponent of this change for a number of reasons, including the depth of reflection that candidates would engage in prior to taking on such a commitment. For me, part of that engagement last time around was receiving feedback from my family. So I went for a walk with my kids and my dog, and my daughter, wise beyond her then 12 years, explained to her brother that, Sam, even if mom doesn't run for council, she's still going to be involved in the community. And that pretty much sealed the deal for me in terms of deciding to run in 2018. At that point, after only 3 years, I felt that my work serving the community in this capacity was unfinished. Well, I never could have anticipated the outcome of the 2018 election and some of the events that transpired. I similarly could not have foreseen my personal restoration of faith in our community, ushered in by my 5 amazing new council colleagues and the overwhelming support that they received from our community in 2020. This election and the hard work that followed and continues now and for years ahead, I believe has set us on a positive course where we're once again supporting policies that align with Ann Arbor's values. In spite of the challenges of the pandemic, we're making real progress towards our goals around affordable housing, sustainability, enhanced basic services, mobility, and equity, amongst other goals. After much reflection, I've made the decision not to seek elected office. In the future, I'll have more to say about the honor and the privilege of these 8 years representing Ward 3 residents, working with talented and dedicated staff, and alongside some phenomenal partners in public service. But for now, I can say that this decision was easier knowing that I'll be supporting a truly incredible candidate for this seat. And I'm confident that you'll get to know and enjoy getting to know her and some other great candidates in the months ahead. Thanks.
Further communication from council. I'd like to request the following appointments that were presented to City Council in the December 20 regular session. To the Employee Retirement System Board of Trustees, Alexa Nerdrum. To the Historic District Commission, Beverly Willis. To the Transportation Commission, Megan Broven and Suzette Wanikoff. To the Economic Development Corporation, Councilmember Jen Iyer. May I have a motion, please? Moved by Councilmember Grand, seconded by Councilmember Adina. Discussion? Councilmember Griswold.
I will not be supporting these appointments tonight, not because of qualifications of the individuals, but because of my concern for miscommunication on social media at all levels of government. This seems to be an evolving situation. We have Frances Hagan, a Facebook whistleblower who's been in the news frequently. Twitter permanently suspended the account of Marjorie Taylor Greene yesterday. That was her personal account. And I feel like if we don't have guidelines and provide some expectations that we are simply condoning the miscommunication that continues to negatively impact our community, our country, and especially our citizens regarding COVID-19 and all of the miscommunication there. I look forward to having guidelines in the future so that I can again vote for appointments. I'd like to also say this has nothing to do with the First Amendment rights. People can be as silly as they want on social media, but they need to have expectations that if they're representing the city of Ann Arbor, that they're doing so in a professional manner. Thank you.
Further discussion? Roll call vote, please, starting with, I believe, Councilmember Griswold. Pardon me, Councilmember Griswold, were you first last time?
Yes.
All right, then it should be Song. For roll call vote, please, starting with Councilmember Adina.
Mayor, actually, according to my notes, it will be Councilmember Grant.
I appreciate the correction. Roll call vote, please, starting with Councilmember Grand.
Councilmember Grand,
Yes.
Councilmember Adina,
Yes.
Mayor Taylor,
Yes.
Councilmember Iyer,
Yes.
Councilmember Nelson,
Yes.
Councilmember Briggs,
Yes.
Councilmember Ramlawi,
Yes.
Councilmember Hayner, absent, Councilmember Dish,
Yes.
Councilmember Griswold,
No.
Councilmember Song, absent, motion carries.
Thank you, and I'd like to recommend the following nominations for your consideration at our next meeting. Down to the Downtown Area Citizens Advisory Council, John Splitt. To the Housing Board of Appeals, Todd Selesky and Robin Grossoich. We now come to a set of, pardon me, I have a motion, please, to approve the consent agenda. Moved by Councilmember Ramlawi, second by Councilmember Iyer. Discussion of the consent agenda. All in favor? Opposed? Consent agenda is approved. We now come to a set of public hearings. Public hearings are opportunities for members of the public to speak to council and the community about the specific subject matter of the public hearing. That is to say, you need not have signed up in advance to speak at a public hearing, but your speech must relate to the subject matter of the public hearing. We're again, with respect to each of our public hearings, we will bifurcate speakers. I will first ask for speakers here in the chambers, and then I will ask for speakers on Zoom. We come to public hearing number 1, an ordinance to amend section 522.3 Stormwater Management and Soil Erosion, 529.6 Site Plans of Chapter 55 of the Unified Development Code, Title 5 of the Code of the City of Ann Arbor. Is there anyone in chambers who would like to speak at this public hearing? Process for doing so would be coming up to the podium. You'll have 3 minutes in which to speak, and we'll take it from there. Is there anyone who would like to speak at this public hearing? Is there anyone online who would like to speak at this public hearing? To speak at a public hearing, enter the number on your screen. That is 877-853-5247. 877-853-5247. Once you're connected, please enter 942-1273-2148. 942-1273-2148. Once you're connected and it is time for your public hearing, please enter *9, *9 to indicate that you wish to speak. When it is your turn to speak, our clerk will let you know and identify you by the last 3 digits of your telephone number. You'll have 3 minutes in which to speak, so please pay close attention to the time. Our clerk will notify you when 30 seconds are remaining and when your time has expired. When your time has expired, please conclude your remarks and cede the floor. Is there anyone remotely who would like to speak at public hearing number 1?
Caller with the phone number ending in 779, do you have a comment? Caller with the phone number ending in 779, do you have a comment?
Hello?
Hello, Mr. Atia, do you have a comment?
Yes, I do. Hello, my name is Abdul. I'm a student at the university and a Southeast Michigan native. I'm a sophomore in the university, and I'm just calling in to announce my support for the public hearing number 1 ordinance change, because for a few different reasons. And so, my parents are immigrants in the United States, and they came to America in search of opportunity, and that's one thing that a lot of people come to the United States in search of, opportunity. And one of the biggest obstacles to opportunity in the United States at this moment right now, especially in places like Ann Arbor, is housing costs. In Ann Arbor, we have an extreme shortage of housing. Some analysts have put the shortage of housing to be 5,000 to 10,000 units. And we're just not building anywhere near as many units of housing at an affordable rates as we need to be doing right now. This ordinance change would eliminate the city council's vote on all housing projects that fit under the city's by right zoning. And so, seeing as that the city council can't even vote down a by right project, it's a redundant, unnecessary part of the process that just stifling production of housing that is needed, because it adds so much time to the approval of new housing in the city. And when you add more time, when you add more site plans or whatever nonsense has been thought up by city councils of times past that we're trying to block housing, you add expenses, you add barriers to entry to the market, you block out small time developers who are trying to start up their own businesses and trying to build stuff to actually benefit their community. And you just privilege the luxury developers who have money to burn, and you basically stifle the production of development in Ann Arbor to help produce more housing to reach the really high demand of housing in the city. So that's why I support this ordinance. Really happy to see this ordinance come up today, and I think it's going to help us focus on what really needs to be done, and that's to make long-lasting changes that incorporate what the community wants into the city's zoning code, instead of wasting time on public comments that come and talk about projects that the city can't even vote down. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Caller with the phone number ending in 677. Do you have a comment?
Hi, this is Michelle Hughes, and I too am calling in favor of this change. I too would like to see more housing built faster in order to welcome more new members to our community and lower the stakes of what it means to be an Ann Arborite. And so I think that when we have this unnecessary level of review where City Council was not able to even vote against it, it just adds process and it adds expense to creating housing. And I think that we should have fewer barriers to creating housing rather than more barriers. We've seen in recent times a couple of developments that were unpopular and that people didn't like. And they wished that the City Council had voted them down. But the problem is they were by right proposals. And I think that having a fake vote by City Council that City Council can't even vote no on unless they just want to get sued has confused people about what it is that we should be debating. We shouldn't be, if a developer has given us the exact type of development that we required from them, then we don't have the authority to stop them from doing that. Well, if we don't like what we're getting, we need to be focusing on changing our laws. And I hope that this change will help focus public debate on that instead, on making sure that our zoning laws are appropriate to what we need as a community. And to be clear, what I think we need as a community is more housing faster and more density. So that's what we should be focusing on. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Caller with the phone number ending in 411. Do you have a comment? Phone number 411. Do you have a comment? Press *6 to unmute yourself. Go ahead.
Can you hear me? Thank you, Jackie. Mayor Taylor, members of council, this is James Demore, and I'm speaking to you tonight as a former member of the City Planning Commission. And I spoke to you regarding this at first reading, but I felt important to make some other points. Speaking from experience as a commissioner, yes, you have a professional staff and commissions who certainly understand the importance of the role, and that cannot be discounted. However, I find it odd that this city is going to take a cue from former Governor Snyder's redevelopment ready plan and take the people's oversight away from many planning issues. You are our elected voices and oversight of the city. You are our representatives to the general public. And you have the latitude to make decisions that a planning staff and Indian Planning Commission cannot. And the term, with all due respect to other speakers and what's been put out, I would say to refute that, I say the term by right, quote unquote, has been abused. You have more latitude than what you think. A member of the City Planning Commission cannot meet with outsiders or members of the public to discuss a planning project before the city without disclosure to their peers that they had done so prior to public hearing. While ideally they should represent the public, they are bound by planning procedures and principles. Who is it that listens to the public? City Council. City planning staff are required to make a recommendation under city ordinance. I have had members of staff say to me that sometimes they had to put something up in terms of a favorable recommendation despite their own misgivings as a project because it met the underlying zoning, but could arguably be denied in terms of a negative impact on public health, safety, and welfare, as well as making a subjective call on natural features. That call needs to be made on the commission level, and a second review needs to happen on council. Planning staff makes a recommendation. Planning Commission makes a recommendation on the recommendation. Sometimes they don't agree. Council, you should have that final authority. You are the people's elected representatives. It should be the council who has a say, as attractive it is to defer ostensibly by right parcels. And you give citizens an additional opportunity to air their support or concerns on a given project that may have not have been apparent or be able to be realized or discussed at the Planning Commission level. You provide that voice for the citizens to make what publication one commission is set to make the city one of the top 10 places to live in America. That happens by public input and participation. And yes, it means council oversight as well. Reviewing your Removing your review planning efforts will not make housing more affordable, nor has your oversight prevented thousands of units of housing from being built in recent years, as some people have suggested. We need your voice, even if it's an agreement. Folks, you're not taking anything away from the poor by having your review of the matter. Thanks for considering my remarks.
Thank you.
Adam Jestwitz, do you have a comment?
Yeah, my name is Adam Juskevich. I'm in the 4th Ward, and I was just calling to voice my support for this resolution, eliminating the council's review of by right developments. I think we are in a housing crisis, and we need to be able to get these things through faster and get them built for less money. And I think if we have issues with some of these specific types of developments that we're seeing in the city, we should address those issues by altering our zoning rules to make sure that the kinds of developments we want in the city are getting built, rather than trying to go through the process of arguing about things that we can't actually make any difference on in a council meeting. So I think let's go ahead in that direction, and let's pass this and eliminate council review on by right developments. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ann Bannister, do you have a comment?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great, thank you. This is Ann Bannister, former Ward 1 council member, and as the original sponsor in 2020 of this resolution that has helped bring us to this amendment here tonight, I'd like to say that at that time, this resolution was unanimously approved, and it was widely applauded as correcting a systemic problem in the site plan review process. The intention of the resolution was to simplify the review process, which had become convoluted and expensive for small business, and was preventing small commercial properties from being improved due to the cost and time prohibitions. So the goal was to encourage and support the growth and development of small businesses. Although tonight's amendments are a significant improvement over the current ordinance, it falls short of best practices in 2 key areas. Number one, unfortunately, it makes stormwater management harder than it was by eliminating the existing square footage exception. Stormwater requirements should have been kept in proportion to the size of the project. We cannot solve stormwater problems at the expense of small commercial property owners. And additional water detention requirements for small projects are unfairly expensive and will encourage more properties to fall into disrepair, which we don't want. And secondly, it's very chilling that Ann Arbor is using former Governor Snyder's redevelopment ready plan and is taking away the people's oversight of many land use and planning decisions. Our current 3-step process is better in this area in that it includes built-in checks and balances. As James Damore, our previous caller, already said, currently if the public has concerns about a project, we have a public hearing, or multiple public hearings, and concerns about the public health, safety, and welfare, and importantly, our trees and natural features can be discussed. Under the current good system and process, planning staff makes a recommendation, then planning commission makes a recommendation on staff's recommendation, and then council has the final authority.
30 seconds.
Please do not give away your duties to represent your residents and allow residents to participate. Furthermore, ASAP, we need to engage robust citizen input and update the comprehensive land use plan for the city ASAP. Council oversight has not prevented regular housing and affordable housing from being built. To the contrary, Ann Arbor is one of the top 10 places to live because of our robust public input and participation in council oversight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor, I don't see any other callers on Zoom with their hands up at this time.
Thank you.
I have one more. Caller 340, do you have a comment? Phone number ending in 340?
Yes, greetings, Ann Arbor City Council. My name is Luis Vasquez. I'm a resident of the First Ward, and I'm speaking in favor of this resolution. As previous callers have pointed out, Ann Arbor is in a severe housing crisis, and anything that we can do right now to push forward more housing development of all kinds, I am in favor of. And thank you for putting this forward.
Thank you.
Caller with the phone number ending in 604, do you have a comment? Phone number 604, press *6 to unmute your phone.
Hi, everybody. This is Eric Lipson in the Fourth Ward, and I sat on the Planning Commission with James Damore, and I want to second what he said. You know, those who are saying that we desperately need housing and we should build it faster, I would say we should build it better, not faster. I think that the City Council has a very important oversight role, and I've turned around because Ann Arbor is unique in that respect, or not unique, but one of the few cities in which the City Council does have the right to review all Planning Commission decisions. What I would suggest to those who say that this is pushing out small developers, that it does make sense to have a threshold above which the City Council would review by right the developments. And the reason I say that, first, make a threshold so that smaller developers don't have to jump through too many hoops. But the reason I say this is because it was my experience when I was on council, or excuse me, when I was on Planning Commission, that if a by right development was turned down by council, which happened, what happened was there was a period of negotiation before any litigation happened, and usually those cases resolved themselves before litigation or in the middle of litigation. So the city actually usually got a better outcome because the developer, rather than fight for and have it cost them a lot of money if the city wanted certain improvements or there was a conflict about what was necessary under the statute, there was usually a compromise. And so I discovered, and I think that this is a very important part of the process, and also because, as has been pointed out, more people watch the City Council meetings than watch and participate than those who watch the Planning Commission. So I would recommend that that the council put a threshold on this, if nothing else, but allow most developments above a certain threshold to go before City Council. Thank you.
Thank you.
Caller with the phone number ending in 534, do you have a comment? Caller 534, go ahead.
Hello, this is Tom Stolbert calling from Lower Town. I'd like to weigh in as an actual developer. In theory and in a vacuum, having site plans no longer go to City Council is not necessarily a bad thing, but we live in the real world, and especially in Ann Arbor, we are not in a vacuum in terms of planning and zoning right now. I developed subdivision in multiple communities, presented to multiple planning commissions and city councils and township boards, met with planning managers, met with council members. One of the things we did, and that other developers do, is watch what councils and planning commissions say when other developments are coming before them, before we're even designing ours. And we hear from planning commissioners and the city council members while we watch these other meetings what the community wants. Citizens talk to their council members. They don't talk to planning commissioners. They tell their council members when they're talking about a particular development, the things that they want and don't want. And city council members in their discussions talk about what are priorities to them. Is housing, affordable housing, more of a priority than sustainability? Planning commissioners might be talking about solar and electrification, but not emphasizing affordable housing. But city council members might be emphasizing affordable housing. So a developer can watch all this and bake that into the design before we even bring a proposal to city council and to the planning department, to planning commission. So from that standpoint, actually having that step in the process allows a better product to come to the city to start with, because city council members are able to express the needs and wants of the community at the table when they're reviewing a project. This whole other notion that we can't have this here because this is, so bad and it's going to make housing so much more expensive. No, it doesn't. It definitely shaves a couple months off, no doubt about that. But that it impacts our housing in the current market from Ann Arbor right now, no way. It makes no difference in terms of the price of housing that are brought to market. Demand is strong. It's going to continue to be strong. Developers are going to bring a product to market, and they're going to charge market price. I also want to mention real quickly in terms of how this looks. This looks really bad in terms of TC1. We didn't have a comprehensive plan revision for the South State Street corridor. We created a TC1 that's not a very good transit-oriented development according to transit-oriented development principles. We reduced public engagement and input by not having that process. Now we're going to mass rezone 69 parcels to TC1. As soon as, if you vote for this tonight and then you vote for that mass rezoning, those 69 parcels, when those projects come, they're not going to go to council for review. You are making the optics on this really bad that you're doing this now. Why don't you wait till you revise the comprehensive plan before you make the changes you're proposing tonight? It'll look a lot better that you're trying to actually be transparent and include the community as opposed to excluding community input. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor, I don't have any other callers with their hands up at this hearing.
Seeing no one, public hearing is closed. Public hearing number 2, an ordinance to amend Chapter 14, Purchasing, Contracting, and Selling Procedure of Title 1 of the Code of the City of Ann Arbor. Is there anyone in-house who would like to speak at this public hearing? Anyone at this, in chambers, who would like to speak at this public hearing? Is there anyone online who would like to speak at this public hearing?
Caller with the phone number ending in 677, do you have a comment?
Oh, hi, this is Michelle Hughes, and I am excited about the changes to the purchasing. I voted in favor of the charter amendment which enables this, and I would like to see the city get quality work done, and I'd like to see us be able to consider the labor practices of our potential contractors. And so I'm excited to see the charter change that we did get reified into the city ordinances. So please approve this. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I don't have any other callers on the line for this hearing.
Seeing no one, this public hearing is closed. Public hearing number 3, public hearing to consider the establishment of an industrial development district at 3874, 3990, 3886, 3994, 3950, and 3958 Research Park Drive for land currently owned by Sartorius Bioanalytical Instruments, Inc. Is there anyone in-house who would like to speak at this public hearing?
Good evening. My name is Phil Santer with Ann Arbor Spark. Wanted to speak in favor of consideration for the Industrial Development District. I want to mention a little bit about the south side of Ann Arbor and take you to what a part of town that I don't think many people realize is even in the city of Ann Arbor, which is Ann Arbor Research Park, which is south of I-94. We have over 85,000 people that come into town every day to work, and about 37,000 of those people are coming in through the south side of the city. They don't always realize what sort of they're coming into a place when they enter town. And I think establishing the IDD is a step in the process of actually having some placemaking around that entrance into town. If you're not familiar, Ann Arbor Research Park was created or conceived around 1959. It was intended to lure corporate and research and development activities into town. It's been sort of a mixed bag since then. The average age of the buildings there are 46 years old, and the parcels that Sartorius is considering redeveloping have an average age of around 56 years old. So there's not been a whole lot of investment since the creation of the park, so it's been a little bit of a mixed bag. As an organization, we've been working over the past few years to try and have a little bit more place around South State Street and trying to work with some of the developers there to encourage life science-based companies in order to enter the market. We had an opportunity to try and win Sartorius's expansion as part of this overall process. The Industrial Development District, that is part of the first step of a process of encouraging redevelopment into, or it's an existing economic development tool. It helps encourage new investment into an area, and it's the first step of setting that process. When the legislature conceived of this tool in the 1970s, they anticipated that local communities would sort of set out industrial development districts where they wanted this kind of investment. That didn't really take place in Ann Arbor Research Park, and so here we are trying to suggest happening for this investment. Appreciate the consideration in the first step of this overall process. I hope tonight is an opportunity to share a little bit more about Sartorius and also about the opportunity for this project in the future. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name's Cam McCausland. I am with Portage Capital Partners. I am the developer of the project as discussed. I thought it would be interesting just to bullet point the economic benefit that this project is going to bring to the community. So first off, in October, we received unanimous approval from planning for the project, so it's been vetted quite a bit throughout through staff. Initial project, 130,000 feet. It's valued at over $55 million. It's going to retain 130 employees that are currently in the Ann Arbor area, mostly in Pittsfield Township right now. It'll create another 160 jobs in the first phase of this project, which can be doubled over time. That average salary is over $83,000. The impact will have about 115 spin-off jobs with an estimated wage of $45,000 into the community. The total impact of wage, which is another incentive that we are looking for in the brownfield that we are requesting as well as part of this project, will be over $550 million over the term. It'll bring an estimated 100 new residents to the county and 20 new students to public schools. Again, the expansion could double the size of this project and bring probably close to 500 employees ultimately to the site. Sartorius, global biopharmaceutical company, 30 countries around the world, located primarily in Germany is where they're headquartered. Sustainability is one of their highest initiatives corporately. I'm sure that if you were to look, you would find that is very high on their list of objectives with this project. We are replacing a functionally obsolescent building. We've actually had demoed that building as we speak today. We've had internal commentary from both staff and I think some of you that has supported the project. The project has the full support of the MEDC. We have generated a brownfield plan that through policy would create a $1.1 million benefit to the Affordable Housing Fund. The schools are the beneficiary of about $1 million over that lifetime. It's again, as Phil mentioned, really economic benefit to the community since that park hasn't done anything since 1960 when it was first conceived. So the Sartorius, we were looking at building a gold certified LEED building. We currently have designed 150 kW solar array on the building. It has 174 EV parking, which is full implementation of parking, complete stormwater management, which we do not have at that location right now in any capacity, 750 feet of new 12-inch water main. So in closing, it's the case study of why we incent these types of opportunities for the community. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else in chambers who would like to speak at this public hearing? Is there anyone online who would like to speak at this public hearing?
Mayor, I don't have any callers on the line for this hearing.
Thank you. Seeing no one, this public hearing is closed. May I have a motion, please, to approve the minutes, the work session minutes of December 13 and the regular session meeting minutes of December 20, 2021, moved by Councilmember Griswold, second by Councilmember Dish. Discussion of the minutes. All in favor? Opposed? The minutes are approved. We now come to B1, an ordinance to amend sections 522.3 stormwater management and soil erosion, 529.6 site plans of Chapter 55 of the Unified Development Code of Title 5 of the Code of the City of Ann Arbor, moved by Councilmember Dish, seconded by Councilmember Graham. Discussion, please, of B1. Councilmember Dish.
Thank you. I'd like to say a few words about this proposal. And I'd like to start by saying that Ann Arbor's site plan review process is out of step with most of Michigan's municipalities and with the guidelines of the Michigan Planning Association. We are not unique in having a right to review. We are unique in providing an occasion for council review of a decision over which council has very little discretion, if any. When a site plan is consistent with existing zoning, when it has met all required technical specifications and been approved by the Planning Commission, most cities in Michigan close the file. They do this because when a rezoning is not at issue, site plan review is an administrative decision, not a policy decision. To bring an administrative decision before council doesn't serve democracy or the public's interests well. On the contrary, it misleads residents by creating the false impression that council has the power to deny or significantly modify a project that has met the terms of city and state law. I agree with Abdul, the Michigan student, who stated so eloquently that this policy change is a counterpart to our affordable housing policy. Developers can produce housing at a lower cost when construction costs are not inflated by superfluous reviews. This policy is recommended by the Biden administration for that very reason. For those who are worried about council giving up oversight and the people losing a voice, there will be a public hearing at Planning Commission. Members of the Planning Commission are very thorough, and they are responsive to public concerns. They can also be written to by the public. In addition, the data are reassuring. Regarding site plans that do not involve rezoning, Planning Commission and City Council are almost always aligned. Since 2016, the Planning Commission and City Council have come to the same conclusion on site plans 92% of the time, and have come to different conclusions only 6 times, that's 8%. In 2 of those 6 cases, legal action was initiated by a petitioner after City Council denial. That's 2857 Packard and 2601 Pontiac, known as Cottages at Barton Green, or known as The One. That's, you know what, that's plenty for now.
Further discussion? Councilmember Ramlawi.
Thank you. I view this as a mixed bag. I will be supporting it tonight, but I don't think it's going to usher in the results that many people believe it will, in bringing in lower cost, affordable housing. I do believe there is a value added when site plans come to council for review. We can learn. These chairs turn over quite often, and when a council member is elected, they don't know all the facts. They don't know everything. It's a process that you learn, and I think developers listen, and they incorporate features that they hear from council members during the discussions. I don't think this is going to lower the overall cost to a level where it's going to be noticeable by anybody. It will, in some cases, make it better for the builders and the residents in many cases. and reducing time, stress, and, but in terms of delivering affordable housing, I think this is going to make no difference. And I don't believe that we are misleading residents when site plans come up for review and for a vote. I think in the two instances that were mentioned by my colleague, we ended up getting a better development. We got a better project in the end. So this will pass. It has the votes. I'll support it. But I don't think it's perfect, and I don't think it's going to deliver everything that some people would hope for.
Councilmember Grant.
Thank you. This one has been on my bucket list for a long time, and I'm thrilled to see it come forward, having gone through a really strong process, having been reviewed by Planning Commission and with input from staff. This is a best practice for a reason. I believe I have seen council members in the past mislead residents in making them think that we can vote down a development that's by right. And I do think that not only does this enable, time for discussions where they may need to happen around rezonings at the council table, but it's going to free up a lot of time for our planning staff. And where we want to make changes, I think is not in trying to mislead folks in thinking that we can vote down a by right development, but really instead work on our ordinances and our zoning so that we can have better projects. And one of the things in doing that is allowing staff to help support us in those changes. We can't make them just on our own. We need the support of Planning Commission. We need the support of planning staff to help create better ordinances. And so do I think this is a panacea that will have more affordable housing just because we're doing this? No, but is it an important step? And is it an important step in helping us to get to those better ordinances and having development that we want to see? I think absolutely it is. So I'm just thrilled that this is finally in front of us this evening.
Councilmember Nelson.
I would just urge us to remember history that I guess we're relying on others not remembering. People at this table have voted against by right developments, and it's now being framed as something misleading. But when I was elected to council, I was plunged into closed session conversations or like negotiating a by right development that had been voted down by the council before me. So it's misleading to say that we don't have any voice in it. I am going to be voting against this measure only because it is part of a larger pattern to reduce the accountability of this body to the community and reduce transparency around the decisions that this body makes. And as part of a larger pattern, I am not going to support this. And as my colleague, Councilmember Ramlawi, pointed out, the votes are here and they have been counted. So my vote will probably have very little effect, but it feels like the right thing to do. And so I will oppose this. Thank you.
Councilmember Briggs.
Thanks. I concur with the comments made by Councilmember Dish and Grand about kind of the really strong benefits that these changes will bring. This is also not cutting edge. I'm looking at a report right now from 2013 in Austin about sort of what's the best practices in development. And these are comments made by, for example, Mark White, who wrote the model land code for the American Planning Association, who says, when the cost of development goes up, quality, design, and affordability go down. A longer timeline adds to the cost of development, and steps should be taken to reduce this timeline for greater community benefit with development. Others go on to say, if you care about affordability and design, decisions should be made administratively. The length of time to seek approval of boards, commissions, and council adds up to the cost of development. To keep a project's costs down, design may be compromised, leading to a lower quality development. And folks go on. And And again, this is from 2013. Communities before us, in other states all across Michigan recognize the detriment of bringing by right projects further into the process. If we want to be accountable, we want to be transparent, those are important goals of ours. However, we need to make sure that we are communicating to the public where we have the opportunity to make decisions and where we have the opportunity to make changes. And that's a fundamental responsibility of ours. And that's in terms of focusing in on what the code language should be. And that's where our focus should be as a council. So I will definitely be supporting these changes tonight. And I think they're a step forward for our community.
Councilmember Grant.
Thank you. I just want to address a comment made by Councilmember Nelson earlier that we were counting votes. When council members share values, it doesn't mean that we're counting votes. It means that more often we're going to vote the same way. There's nothing nefarious about it. We don't complain when Democrats support healthcare as a right or reproductive rights. We don't complain when those who share our values vote the same way. So this conspiracy that somehow we're counting votes, I really wish would stop. What I meant by the comment earlier was that sometimes we spend a lot of time talking about things when we already know, based on what council members have even said at this table, how they're going to vote. And so the accusation that we're counting votes, and I, for one, want to thank you, Councilmember Nelson, for pointing out that I voted a lot of times in alignment with Councilmember Iyer and Councilmember Song, because I greatly admire those council members and was truly pleased to know that I was voting the same way with them much more often than not.
Further discussion? Councilmember Ramlawi.
Thank you. I've heard it before, well, if this doesn't work, we can always come back and change it. And I believe this is an ordinance change practice that, I don't think it's an ordinance, it is an ordinance change and a practice that can be revisited later. I find it concerning that policies that were manufactured by the Republican Party of 20 and 30 years ago are now fully embraced by a Democratic council. If we just cut the costs, if we just cut the red tape, if we just cut the oversight, it's better for America. It's better for Americans. Get rid of the oversight. It's going to reduce cost and make things better. This is the mantra of Republicans 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 40 years ago. And it's come part of the Democratic Party's policy making. If we just cut the oversight and cut the processes, that's going to yield us affordable housing. This is, in my opinion, a false narrative. This is a gift to corporate America at the expense of the community. I hope that one day there is enough council members here who will go back and change this and correct the areas
Councilmember?
that are not good.
Councilmember Dish.
I just want to reiterate that we are not getting rid of oversight. We are removing a review of projects that are largely a foregone conclusion because they are an administrative decision. And I want to actually say that It doesn't bother me if this somehow originated 20 or 30 years ago as a Republican policy. If Republicans have good ideas, and I'm not clear that what this is a Republican policy, because as you describe it, get rid of oversight. That doesn't chime with my understanding of this. But nonetheless, when Republicans have good ideas, I think we should copy them. Obamacare was modeled after Governor Mitt Romney's Massachusetts healthcare plan. That was no problem for me. I think it's sad that we are at a time when we have an existential conflict between the two parties. I don't think that serves democracy well at all. So I want us to stay focused on what we are talking about here, which is not a loss of oversight. It is removal of a superfluous review that most of the time doesn't end in a different opinion than the Planning Commission had in the first place. And speaking as a member of Planning Commission, I can say that their reviews of site plans are far more thorough than anything that almost anyone who's at this table could possibly do, because they understand what a site plan is much deeper and with much greater subtlety. And they make changes that would never occur to me that are of public benefit. And maybe for some of you, you know more and they would occur to you, but it is pretty astonishing what they come up with. And I trust their expertise and the expertise of staff. And for me, that is what this vote is about. It's not about lack of oversight.
Councilmember Iyer.
Thank you. I'm going to be supporting this. Councilmember Dish did a much more eloquent job than I will of stating why this is not about removing oversight. But to me, it comes down to policy, not projects. For the most part, council should be focused on creating the policy for our land use. And once that policy is set, we don't need to micromanage staff and the Planning Commission in reviewing what we have already set forth from this table. So, we need to be focused on policy. Now, when people want to do a project that does not conform with our policy, that's when it needs to come to council. But when folks in the community want to do a project and it conforms to what this council has laid out in ordinance, there is just absolutely no reason to bring it to this body and add to the process and the development costs. I don't think this is going to, result in a huge, savings on the part of developers, but I think it is one small piece of a series of things that we can do to make the process more efficient and better. We should be constantly trying to improve it, the process and the policy, not micromanaging the projects.
Further discussion? Councilmember Griswold.
Yeah, I think possibly this additional review by council is, if it's not consistent with best practice, in Ann Arbor, it is implemented to try to correct a process that's suboptimal from the beginning. And we know that we have to change and improve the process. We know that we have to change and improve the culture within the city of Ann Arbor. And we're working to do that. We're addressing the lack of metrics, which leads to loyalty over competence being rewarded. And so I'm going to be voting for this tonight, but I am going to be searching for other ways to improve housing, and I'll describe that in my closing comments, and also looking for policies and resolutions to improve the process so that we can get more housing and we can build it in a more efficient manner. Thank you.
Further discussion? Councilmember Briggs.
Yeah, I would just like to state that I definitely disagree with my colleague in the 5th in terms of characterizing this as a gift to developers. I characterize this as a gift to the community. This is a small step forward in terms of making projects more affordable, improving our design process, making our processes clear and efficient. That's our goal. Those should be our goals on council. You know, we have the opportunity as to improve code, and if we want to bring those changes forward, that's where our focus should be.
Further discussion? I'm going to be voting in favor of the resolution. For my part, I believe that accountability is grounded in candor and grounded in accuracy. The bottom line is that we do not have the legal right to deny by right developments. The consideration of by right developments by this council for a vote, where that vote is determined by law, I think constitutes, I think that misleads the public. It gives public the impression that we have freedom of choice when we take a vote on a by right development. The fact is that we do not. And to have that vote considered by council gives members of the public the wrong impression about how our government is put together. The bottom line is that if a development complies with their zoning, we and Planning Commission have a legal obligation to approve it. It is unlike other circumstances where we exercise our individual discretion. Leaving the consideration to the Planning Commission, I think will improve the public understanding of how our system works, how that system works in Michigan and elsewhere, and that understanding will affect a civic good. Further discussion? Roll call vote, please, starting with Councilmember Grand.
Councilmember Grant?
Oh, yes.
Councilmember Medina?
Yes.
Mayor Taylor?
Yes.
Councilmember Iyer?
Yes.
Councilmember Nelson?
No.
Councilmember Briggs?
Yes?
Councilmember Ramlawi?
No.
Councilmember Hayner, absent. Councilmember Dish?
Yes.
Councilmember Griswold?
Yes.
Councilmember Song, absent. Motion carries.
B2, an ordinance to amend Chapter 14, Purchasing, Contracting, and Selling Procedure of Title II of the Code of the City of Ann Arbor, moved by Councilmember Iyer, second by Councilmember Adina. Discussion, please, of B2. Councilmember Iyer.
Thank you. I'll be brief because I've spoken on this topic multiple times, and it should surprise no one that I'm absolutely thrilled to be voting for this best value purchasing ordinance tonight. By allowing us to consider factors other than simply price, it will greatly improve the way the city evaluates and awards construction contracts for infrastructure projects. This ordinance is important because it brings our values into the process of selecting contractors. Values about fair labor practices, values about workforce development, values about job safety and construction quality. And I firmly believe that it will eventually benefit all Ann Arbor residents to have this new ordinance in place.
Further discussion? Councilmember Adina.
Thank you. I'm also going to be incredibly brief because, as Councilmember Iyer indicated, we have spoken at length about this. I really just wanted to use an additional opportunity to thank the community for empowering us to make this decision and really lead with our values in contracting in the future, purchasing in the future, and also to thank Councilmember Iyer for her leadership on this as well. She really kind of led the charge in making sure that this next step is taken so that we can implement it into our policy here in the city and make sure that it goes into effect. So thank you for your leadership on that.
Further discussion? I, too, would like to be brief in my thanks to Councilmember Iyer for having taken the lead with both feet and hands on this issue. It simply would not have happened without her. I also will observe that Councilmember Udina, although lavish in his praise of Councilmember Iyer, is not without, does not, banter escapes me. The bottom line is he did a lot of work on this, and I'm grateful too. It will, I think, be an important step forward. When we, in our daily processes, none of us fail to take into account the value of the thing that we're purchasing. Now we will have the opportunity as a city to do just that, and I think that our decisions will be the better for it, and the value to the community will be the better for it. So I'm glad that this is moving forward, and am eager to reap its fruits. Further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? It is approved. C1, an ordinance to repeal and replace Section 962 of Chapter 108, Disorderly Conduct of Title 9, Police Regulations of the Code of the City of Ann Arbor. Moved by Councilmember Grand, second by Councilmember Udina. Discussion, please, of C1. All in favor? Opposed? It is approved. DC1, resolution to improve pedestrian safety at crosswalks with reliable illumination in the short term and optimal LED streetlights within 5 years. Moved by Councilmember Griswold, seconded by Councilmember Briggs. Discussion, please, of DC1. Councilmember Griswold.
On the advice of the city attorney, I would like to postpone this. They actually advised tabling it, but I would like to postpone it until January 18th. We have a serious crisis. We have lost life as a result of unlit crosswalks. We have a crosswalk repair, a streetlight outage repair process that has not worked for over a decade. I've been working directly with DTE executives. I did that when I was on the Ann Arbor Public School Transportation Safety Committee. I stopped doing that as a council member. However, I have resumed that because we are in a serious crisis. Today, I received a notice of a ticket that staff closed that I opened on Christmas Eve, and they closed it because they said all of the streetlights were repaired. However, all of the streetlights were not functioning because a third party cut some of the streetlight cabling, and it is out again, but the city was not aware of this. The reason I'm focusing on this area, it is Huron near the mid-block crosswalk at Thayer, and we had a very serious injury crash. A pedestrian was seriously injured in January of 2019, and I hate to say it, it seems like Groundhog's Day. Every day we wake up and we've got unlit crosswalks, very dangerous situations. We cannot be a pedestrian-friendly city if we don't have safe crosswalks. So I hope that we can postpone this for 2 weeks and work with DTE and the legal staff and get it revised.
We don't yet have a second on the postponement, but with respect to the distinction between postponing and tabling, Councilmember, tabling would now allow you to bring forward a different resolution that would bear the fruit of the conversation between you and the attorney staff. Postponing would obligate this precise resolution to come back.
This resolution, but I would be able to amend it at the next meeting.
That is true, but then no one else would understand what those changes were,
okay.
and they would not be in the packet, and that's why I think why the attorney's office suggested tabling. It's your motion, so I'm not getting in your way. I'm
Okay.
just trying to.
I didn't want to table it to a date uncertain because I want to keep a priority on it.
Fair point.
So if I could postpone it, and if necessary, I would change my postponement at a later date.
Perfect.
Is that okay?
Is there a second? Second by Councilor Udina. Discussion of postponement? Is that a, Councilor Grand, is that a?
Yeah, I have something I want to say about this one.
Councilor Grand.
Okay, I won't be supporting a postponement. We received advice for a reason. I think this resolution has a lot of problems in it, namely that it dictates what DTE does, which we don't have control of as a council. So I would much prefer to see it tabled. or just vote it down and then bring something back that's different. It would be the same result. But I don't think bringing this back in 2 weeks to have the same discussion, that we can't, there's so many resolve clauses in here that talk about what DTE must do, which to my understanding, we don't have the authority to do. I'd much rather see it be tabled, so I'm going to vote no on the postponement.
For the discussion of the postponement, Councilmember Griswold on the postponement.
I've been working with DTE executives, and we are DTE's customer. So to work with them on a 5-year plan for LED lighting, I don't think is unreasonable. And I have shared this resolution with DTE, and I have agreed to share any future resolution with them and get their feedback before it's submitted again for Legistar. So if the body would prefer that I postpone it and so I have the opportunity to bring back another resolution, I am willing to do that, but I am committed to doing that in 2 weeks. So, can I withdraw my postponement and move to table it as the attorneys advised?
Let's say, I think that the motion is the bodies at this point, so let me suggest that we vote down the postponement and then I'll get it back to you and you will move to table it.
Okay.
Yes, Councilmember Briggs. Further discussion of the postponement? All in favor? All opposed? This postponement fails. Councilmember Griswold.
I move to table this resolution as advised by our city attorney.
Seconded. Is there a second on the table? By Ramlawi. Discussion? Councilmember Ramlawi on the tabling.
Thank you. And this is one of these times that I can agree with my colleague, Councilmember Grand, that, telling DT what to do in this case, I don't know if it's going to be successful in getting us to where we need to go. Working with them in ways and suggesting and asking, I think, is going to yield us more fruit. It is disappointing that we have to have this conversation again. I remember that night, unfortunately, on January 19th, in January of 2019, we left a work session and got that news. And the responses to some of the agenda questions that I think Councilmember Briggs had asked shows little or no improvement in the 2 or 3 years. Hopefully, something better can be done this time, because we keep getting promises, we keep having conversations, and there's no progress.
Roll call vote on the tabling. Starting with Councilmember Grand.
Grand?
Yes.
Councilmember Dina?
Yes.
Mayor Taylor?
Yes.
Councilmember Iyer?
Yes.
Councilmember Nelson?
Yes.
Councilmember Briggs?
Yes.
Councilmember Ramlawi?
Yes.
Councilmember Hayner? Absent. Councilmember Dish?
Yes.
Councilmember Griswold?
Yes.
Councilmember Song? Absent. Motion carries.
DC2, resolution to approve succession and retention agreement with Stephen K. Postma, moved by Councilmember Grand, seconded by Councilmember Dish. Discussion, please, of DC2. Councilmember Ramlawi.
Thank you. Speaking toward to the, and I hope this is proper at the right time, at least, the agreement between our current city attorney and the city after Etleen begins her role here with the city, and the time frame outlined in that agreement. And I don't know if our city attorney is here to maybe ask a few questions. If this
Yes, I'm here.
Thank you. Couple of the terms here seem to be lengthy. The termination agreement is 60 days versus 30 days or 45 days. Any reason why it would need a 60-day instead of a 30-day written notice for termination?
Sure, Councilmember, you should understand that this agreement was at the request of the successor city attorney to the extent that when, as I outlined in the last meeting, that the succession planning had initially called for overlap at the beginning, and that is not going to happen. So in discussions with her, the discussion really was about my availability and my willingness to stay on, and in a manner that's useful to her. And so these terms have been provided to her, and she's agreed with them. As far as the 60 days, it's to provide some assurance that I am willing to stay for a period of time. Now, whether they're long or not, they're not long to her, they're not long to necessarily to me. It's really providing her some stability so that she has access that she needs. Now, if it turns out that there is nothing for me to do, well, that's fine with me, and it will be fine for her. So the 60 days was really to provide the ability for either me, if I have a change of circumstance where I can't do the 10 hours a week or whatever is required, or to provide her with some comfort that at least I'll be here for a 60-day period to wrap up. So that's really why it's there. Again, she's going to be looking at the work, and so if the work's not there, we certainly end the agreement. So
I appreciate the explanation. I'm still not comfortable with that.
Councilmember?
Yeah, I know, but unfortunately, I would ask another question. I just didn't expect that.
Sure, go ahead.
Respond.
Further discussion? Side comments, Councilmember Briggs, and we'll go back to Ramalawi.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank Mr. Postma for being so thoughtful in his succession planning. He's provided the city many years of service and provided many, over a year of notice about his departure, and has very generously agreed to stay around and provide guidance as needed to the incoming city attorney. So I just wanted to take this opportunity to share my support for this agreement, but also to just specifically thank him for being so generous with his time.
I'd say, I would also like to say that I've had a conversation with Ms. Kaur today, in fact, about this contract, and she has reviewed it. She has provided comments on it. Those comments have been incorporated. It is something that she supports without equivocation. And in that light, I'm delighted to support it as well. And similarly grateful to Mr. Postma, who will be working for the city for longer than he had wished. Doing so, of course, in order to accommodate the schedule of the new incoming city attorney, and to provide, of course, excellent succession planning, as he has done since I got here. Further discussion of DC2, Councilmember Ramlawi.
Yeah, thank you. My comments and concerns are not to diminish his contribution to the city or his qualifications or the need for an overlap. I just never, don't really see a 60-day, I usually see 30. Another date of interest is the continuation through November 31st. Is there 31 days in November? Thought there was only 30 days in November. And
in that case, it's an illusory provision, and it would only go to the 30th. I don't know that it will go that long at all. I had just set out that I'd be willing to do it through that time period. The goal is to do things efficiently, council member. I've been doing succession planning successfully for the city a very long time, and these times are put out, not that they will necessarily be needed, but that they will be, that's my commitment to stay, how long I'd be willing to stay, and the time period per week to accommodate my situation, both in retirement and my personal circumstances at home. And so certainly things might change, but in any case, the work and other things will go through the successor city attorney, and so that the timing, the work product, and so on. And if in the end we wrap things up early, we wrap that up. But I'll still be available, whether it's 1 hour a week or 3 hours a week, and so until that time period. And so if she decides that we're pretty much done on that, that's great. And so, like I said, I've been doing this for a long time. And so the 60 days was both agreed to and to provide her some comfort that I wouldn't abruptly just end it. So that's why it's there.
Further discussion? Roll call vote, please, starting with Councilmember Grand. Ms. Beaudry?
Sorry about that. Councilmember Graham?
Yes.
Councilmember Redina?
Yes.
Mayor Taylor?
Yes.
Councilmember Iyer?
Yes.
Councilmember Nelson?
Yes.
Councilmember Briggs?
Yes.
Councilmember Ramlawi?
Yes.
Councilmember Hayner, absent. Councilmember Dish?
Yes.
Councilmember Griswold?
Yes.
Councilmember Song, absent. Motion carries.
DC3, resolution to waive attorney-client privileges to Attorney Salvatore report and to make the report public. Moved by Councilmember Iyer, seconded by Councilmember Redina. Discussion, please, of DC3. Councilmember Griswold.
I will not be supporting this. As Mr. Postma just said, he's been doing this for a very long time, referring to some of his activities. And I think that the fact that he has more seniority and experience with the city than any of the elected officials or with the city administrator has elevated him to a position of authority. However, at the point where the whistleblower named the attorney, and I assume that meant the attorney's office, on October 3rd as failing to protect him, it's my interpretation that at that point the city attorney's office should have removed themselves from this case. That didn't happen, and I understand why, because of the culture within the city and because of Mr. Postma's long tenure. However, he is a party to this case, and for that reason, I will not be supporting any reports coming from his office. Personally, I am embarrassed and ashamed of the report that was written. We need to manage and empower our employees, and to simply use lawyers to attack and belittle employees is not best practice, and it's not how we improve an organization. Thank you.
Further discussion? Councilmember Redina.
So I guess I'm a little confused by my colleagues' comments, largely because I think there might be some confusion about which report we would be voting to make public. This report that we would be, that's on the agenda tonight is with regard to the follow-up investigation into City Administrator Crawford's case.
Yeah, that is correct, Councilmember Rendina. I'm not sure what Councilmember Griswold was referring to, but that is a follow-up report on that issue.
And so I will just end by saying, to the extent that this was something we'd requested with the intention of making it public, I will be supporting this tonight.
Further discussion? Councilmember Remlawi.
In the spirit of transparency and the consistency of and the supporting transparency, I will support this, but I find this whole thing troubling. It's been politicized. And I think these reports lack full credibility. And it is what it is. I think these reports and investigations have been weaponized. They're there to protect some and throw others under a bus. And I guess it just matters who's driving the bus. Currently, I'm in the back of the bus. So I will support this in the spirit of transparency. But I think these investigations and the reports are fraught.
Councilmember Grand.
Thank you. This is super confusing. To my knowledge, nothing in this report has anything to do with a member of council. I really do want to thank Ms. Salvatore for her work on behalf of the city. She has a stellar reputation, and unfortunately, I think some of the insults and comments about her credibility may mean that she'll never do work for the city again, which is truly unfortunate. And I'm embarrassed to hear, frankly, these kinds of remarks about her credibility and about her ethics. And it's interesting to me because this report really has nothing to do about anyone on council. So we have a longstanding policy of releasing these reports even when we don't like what's in them. I don't love everything that's in this report, but in the interest of transparency, that's the practice that we have here at the city. We also have, fortunately, a strong record of hiring some pretty strong independent investigators when the need arises. It was unfortunate that the need did arise in this situation. But I want to thank the Attorney's Office and Ms. Salvatore for their work here. They certainly don't deserve any of the comments that have been levied against them.
Councilmember Iyer.
Thank you. Yes, I will be voting to release this report as well. Of course, I'm, troubled by its contents, but the public deserves to see it. We commissioned this report with the full intention of making it public, and we should. And further, I think when the report is released, it will become very clear why certain council members are attempting to discredit this investigator who does have a stellar reputation, and why they really don't want it released, because they so vociferously supported Mr. Crawford even after the troubling allegations of the first report. So I think we'll once it's made public, it will all become very clear.
Councilmember Griswold.
Yeah, my issue is not with the attorney. My issue is how an organization is managed. And I am the only person on council who has experience in a Fortune 100 company as a senior manager. And never would it have occurred to me that I should hire an outside independent investigator to help manage my employees. And that is what we've done. That is wrong. So this is not about Salvatore. She's an independent investigator. Trump's hired lots of independent investigators, good or bad, that's indifferent. This is not how you manage an organization. This is not how you empower your employees, and therefore it is a sad day.
Further discussion? Councilmember Iyer.
when the person at the highest level of the organization is found, is the subject of the types of allegations that were made about Mr. Crawford, I don't know what else you do besides hire an independent investigator. The idea that you would do anything else is incredibly troubling to me. And as for the comment about being thrown under the bus, if a council member feels under the bus, they threw themselves there by their behavior around this investigation.
Further discussion? I guess I'll say that I concur that when there are concerns with respect to the chief executive, that a outside investigator is 99 times out of 100 going to be the right course of action, and that's exactly what was done here. No one is hiring lawyers to manage employees. We have managers to manage employees, and that is in the form of the city administrator, and it goes down from there. We hire outside investigators to determine facts, and then we do with the facts what we will. And that was done in this case. Ms. Salvatore has been hired by the city to determine a set of facts. She's done so. She has done so as she, frankly, has done everything that she's done for the city. And to my knowledge, in all other aspects of her practice, in a manner that reflects integrity and diligence and care and an effort to work on behalf of her clients. In this case, we asked her to determine the facts, and that she has done, and to report them to us, and that she's done here. And it doesn't get much more complicated. It doesn't get much more plainly stated than that. She's an excellent attorney. She does excellent work. Her reputation is without blemish, and we're lucky and are lucky to have her services. Further discussion? Roll call vote, please, starting with Councilmember Grant.
Member Grand?
Yes.
Councilmember Medina?
Yes.
Mayor Taylor?
Yes.
Councilmember Iyer?
Yes.
Councilmember Nelson?
Yes.
Councilmember Briggs?
Yes.
Councilmember Ramlawi?
Yes.
Councilmember Hayner, absent. Councilmember Dish?
Yes.
Councilmember Griswold?
No.
Councilmember Song, absent. Motion carries.
DC4, resolution in support of virtual meetings under the OMA and SB 0705 and SB 0792. Moved by Councilmember Griswold, seconded by Councilmember Udina. Discussion, please, of DC4. Councilmember Griswold.
The Open Meetings Act was amended to allow virtual meetings, but that expired on December 31st. I've been working with Senator Jeff Irwin, who introduced a bill to extend virtual meetings through March 31st. I'd also like to thank Attorney Christopher Frost because he did additional research and provided some advice to me. So this resolution is really asking the city administrator to coordinate and lobby on our behalf to have a bill passed and signed into law by the governor to extend virtual meetings. I think that when this was allowed to lapse by the legislature in December, they were not aware of the Omicron variant and the harm that it is creating. And so anyway, I'll let other people speak, but I feel very strongly that we need to be allowed to have virtual meetings. And I just want to acknowledge that one of my constituents provided this for me that I modeled before the meeting, which is actually an FAA-approved little unit that you can wear. It comes with a battery pack, HEPA filtration. Hopefully we won't have to be wearing these, and we can have the legislature approve and the governor sign into law the allowance of virtual meetings at least through March, if not longer.
Further discussion? Councilmember Udina.
Thanks, Mayor. I also thank Councilmember Griswold for bringing this forward. This is something I've spoken about previously. I would like to be added as a co-sponsor, please. I am really disappointed in the legislature for their failure to act on this. As Councilmember Griswold pointed out, our own state senator, Jeff Irwin, had proposed this already. There were also proposals in the House to extend our ability to continue meeting virtually as local conditions required. And I think that's what's really at the heart of this is ultimately we should be dictating these decisions based on local public health conditions and not politics in Lansing. And so I am fully supportive of this resolution. I think we need to make sure that when conditions are required, and we are at our highest case count here in Washtenaw County throughout this pandemic, that we should not be forcing people back into council chambers to participate in their government. We've learned a lot over the course of the last 2 years, and I think a modest exception to continue this through March at the very least is warranted. I actually think, as Senator Irwin believes, there are likely instances in which we should continue at the very least hybrid meetings well into the future so that we aren't excluding people from participation. We've actually learned that for many people, virtual meetings are more accessible. And in this case, it is also a positive for our public health. So thank you again for bringing this forward, and I will be supporting it.
For Councilmember Griswold.
I just want to recognize the other people that have assisted in this. State Representative Yusuf Rabi, Commissioner Jason Morgan. I also talked to someone in Congresswoman Debbie Dingell's office today. And what's important to realize is that if we can talk to Republicans in leadership position or even local Republicans that have some influence, then that's going to be helpful because it's going to take votes from the Republicans to actually make this happen. And again, things have changed drastically from what we knew in mid-December. I'd also like to point out that I heard on the news today that Omicron is actually a threat to toddlers and infants because of the way the virus attacks. And so while we don't have infants attending our meetings, we do have adults that go home or work with young children. And so I'm very concerned about that because, and I think that may be a good sales point for the Republicans that continuing to meet in person is not healthy for the young people in our community as well as one could make a business case of why we should allow virtual meetings. And as my colleague said, we have proven through our technology during this pandemic that virtual meetings actually are more accessible for some members of the community, and we need to consider that. And I know that Senator Irwin said that he was working on that approach regarding the Americans with Disability Act. Some of the people that support, the advocates for that act anyway. So it's getting late. I'm tired of speaking with my mask on, so I hope people will join me in supporting this.
Further discussion? Councilmember Nelson. I
know that most of our community probably has a unique window into the situation that we're in right now, but I did want to speak up because I think Councilmember Griswold is alluding to me slightly. I have been teaching in person since fall of 2020, and with much alarm, I have observed a huge difference just in the last month in terms of exposure and infection rates in the very small work environment that I am in. And I would just comment, just to echo Councilmember Griswold, at work today, I was wearing a mask for about 9 hours, so I'm quite relieved to have a short agenda tonight because a long meeting tonight would mean that I suppose I would be in a mask for 16 or 17 hours in one day, and not awesome. Thanks. I am glad that you brought this resolution because this is important to a lot of people. I work 3 days a week with an unvaccinated population, and it's really scary. Thanks.
Further discussion? Councilmember Ramalawi.
Thank you, and thanks to my colleague for bringing this forward and working with others. I have gone on record in support of in-person meetings, and I say that not in light of the recent spike, but prior to all of that. I was hoping that in-person meetings would bring a return of decorum to this office and to this building. And I still hold that thought to be true. I think having online meetings have brought out the worst in my colleagues, has brought out the worst in me, has not produced the best type of government or policy. Meeting here tonight, I did not think we'd be in the conditions that we see ourselves in today. Just like my council colleague, I have worked pretty much nonstop throughout this pandemic with all sorts of people, because that's what I got to do during a living. And I wear a mask all day long, 50, 60 hours a week, engaging in high-risk behavior so that I can have a roof over my head and one day retire. And there's millions of us out there in my position. I hope this is the last wave that we experience in this pandemic. I hope it's over in the next few weeks or a couple months. I hope that we can maybe go back to electronic format until it becomes relatively safe again. And I hope that we all get back in person for reasons I described earlier. The decorum, the lack of respect that we show to each other, the remarks that were made, devalue this seat, devalue this position, and do not produce what we were elected to produce. And that's why I am in favor of in-person meetings as soon as it's safe to do so.
Further discussion? I'd just like to add that I, of course, will be supporting the resolution and look forward to the consideration of this issue by the legislature, and would add that it is a shame. Council, of course, we have I think had done the business we need to do online, but we have many boards and commissions also that are going to be obligated to serve here in person as a result of the change of law from back when. And obligating volunteer boards and commissions to meet in person, obligating volunteer commissioners or board members to have to choose between, coming in between their volunteer public service and, making their personal choice to come into a meeting or not come into a meeting, I think is unfortunate and just, I think it's unfortunate. It's just not the right thing to do. So, I honor the fact that many people, as folks have expressed here and certainly throughout the community, are working in person, all day long, and bless them for it. Where we can, I think, have in-person meetings safely in that future, that would be great. But in the meantime, obviously, it is safer to have meetings online. And when we can achieve our goal and be safer, we should do so. And so, I'm supporting this resolution tonight. Further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? It is approved. Mr. Postma, do we have a closed session today?
Mayor, we do not.
We have before us the clerk's report of communications, petition, and referrals. May I have a motion, please, to approve the clerk's report? Moved by Councilmember Medina, second by Councilmember Dish. Discussion, please, of the clerk's report. All in favor? Opposed? The clerk's report is approved. Mr. Postma, communications from you today.
Just on the succession agreement, I wanted to remind you that a year ago, I told this body that I would be retiring sometime in 2022. 2021 was a long year for many people, and 2022 is now upon us. And I've stuck with my word. I've given the transition agreement. I've worked well with the city administrator, the city administration committee to do that. The fact is, this council has trusted me over the years to do succession planning and to hire people who will come in who are public spirited to do the good work of the city. And as we turn to the new year in 2022, I want to thank them. This council also has asked me to do things like help bring in an interim city administrator who has a wealth of knowledge. You've trusted me to do that, and I've done it. Now, one of the other things you've asked me to do is to hire outside investigators, and I wanted to comment on one aspect, and that is it is normal practice that an HR department would not investigate a city administrator that they work under. That's just normal practice. And of course, I know the attorneys in the state of Michigan. I know the attorneys who have a good reputation. And I've hired 3 of them for this council in the last 2 years. And I've done that, and you've trusted me to do that. That's part of the job you've asked me to do, and I will do it. Now, when the report comes back, when reports come back, those are things that you can then deal with. But again, asking me to go and get something done, and you trust me to do it, and I've done it. So after the fact that we don't want these reports or should have been done differently, again, that's of no consequence to me. Doesn't mean anything to me, and it's not useful. We're in 2022. We've turned a page into a new year. I hearken back to the meeting that I watched, the work session that Mr. Mahoney put together for you, brought speakers in, and in fact, it was quite invigorating. It made me feel that I'd hate to leave city government, which, as I've told you, I now must do. It was great. That meeting was great because it talked about all of the exciting things that are going on in the city. And I appreciated, I told them the next day that I appreciated that meeting because in that meeting, the council looked at the great things that we have to do and didn't flinch, wanted to move forward. But if you really want to move forward, you have to look at issues of governance this year, and you have to avoid, as Councilmember Romlawi said, moving back to discourse that's not useful. Like I said, I've brought people to this city to serve who have great views of public service. And that, I think, is important looking into 2022 to encourage people in public service and for the council to do all things and behave in all manners that encourage people to continue in that service. It's been a great honor to serve the community. I've done what you've asked, and I've given you a transition agreement that I believe will help the city and help my successor who has great skills. And I'm here to assist only as she needs it. And that's what this agreement was. And so I leave you tonight to look at those things from the last year that have been exciting and you've done well, to look at those for an image of how discourse can be done in the future. and to look at 2022 in a good light. So with that, on the first meeting of the new year, I only have, I think, maybe five more meetings with you. I'll leave you with that bit of encouragement tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Postema. We now come to public comment general time. Public comment general time is an opportunity for members of the public to speak at council and the community about matters of municipal interest. To speak at public comment general time, you need not have signed up in advance. We will again bifurcate with folks in the room. Is there anyone in the room who would like to speak at public comment? You'll have 3 minutes.
Hi, my name's Petal Sandcastle. I'm actually the only person in the room for everyone out there, so I felt kind of obligated to come up here. I've never actually attended one of these before. I watch online a lot. My name's Petal Sandcastle. I'm a Ward 1 member. I'm sure maybe some of you remember me speaking throughout the year. I just want to say thank you. This has been, it's kind of a surreal trip watching you all play out over the past year and the dramas unfolding. And as a new business owner in Ann Arbor, there's, coming back after graduating university and traveling the world, and I was eager and excited to see local city government, and watching this play out online over the last year has been, as you have stated really beautifully, Councilmember Amlawi, it's been like reality television. It's pretty compelling, and I was excited to come here tonight, and actually seeing all of you felt a little bit surreal, like I was meeting micro celebrities. And so I just want to thank you for all of your hard work, and once again extend a genuine offer to play with us. Our nonprofit is really aiming to be a bridge amongst the disparate factions, and in Ann Arbor, as much as it is sort of this woke place, there's a lot of discrepancy, and there's a lot of fighting, and there's a lot of soft bigotries in this city, and I think that we have this really cool opportunity where we have a bunch of university interns who are going to be working with us this coming semester, and we're really aiming to be a bridge and to foster some different dialogues. We have a midterm election coming up. There are 500,000 offices up for election in this country, and so I entreat anyone who is watching to consider running for city council. Not to ruffle any of your feathers, but I do think new voices are important, and well, Councilmember Grand's seat is open, which is kind of depressing. Anyway, I'm getting distracted. I was not at all expecting to speak tonight, but I just want to say thank you, and also, I went to college here, and I started in 2002, and that was 20 years ago, and when I was young, and I just thought, I believed in government, I believed in the political process, I just believed in the system. I worked on the Obama campaign, and traveling the world and really talking to a lot of people. There's a lot at stake, and there's a lot that is not so hot in government, in this government body and in government in general. And anyone who's out there who you're sitting on the sidelines and you're just like, feel like a sideline nihilist who's just like, this is all wrong, there's nothing I can do, I just want to flee America. If not us, then who? If not now, when? So I challenge everyone to think of ways to get involved that are not necessarily begging constituents for money. It's the strangest thing that we spend so much time asking constituents for money in order to get money out of politics. I think it's kind of the funny. Anyway, so I think there are a lot of ways to run for office and run campaigns that are
Thank you.
Zero money, and I think we should employ those. So thank you so much.
Thank you. With respect to folks online, if anyone would like to speak at public comment, please enter a number on your screen. That is 877-853-5247. 877-853-5247. Once you're connected, please enter meeting ID 942-1273-2148. 942-1273-2148. Once you're connected, please enter *9 to indicate that you wish to speak. Our clerk will identify you with the last 3 digits of your telephone number. When it is your turn to speak, you'll have 3 minutes in which to speak, so please pay close attention to the time. Our clerk will notify you when 30 seconds are remaining and when your time has expired. When your time has expired, please conclude your remarks and cede the floor. Is there anyone online who would like to speak at public comment?
Mr. Attia, do you have a comment?
Well, yes, I do. First off, I want to thank the city council for your hard work. I'm sorry to keep you guys in your chambers for longer than you already had to sit there. But I just wanted to talk about AC2 and AC5. The AC2 is about pedestrian safety improvements around schools. The Ann Arbor Public Schools considers the walk shed of which elementary school students should walk to school to be 1.5 mile radius. And now if you do a 1.5 mile radius around Ann Arbor's public schools, elementary schools, you will find that every single part of Ann Arbor is covered. And so basically what I'm trying to say here is that if Ann Arbor is going to believe that that the whole entire city is an elementary school walk shed, then the whole entire city should look like an elementary school walk shed, meaning that we should design our city with mobility for 5 to 11-year-olds, or like 10, 11, I don't know how old fifth graders are, but you guys get the idea, in mind. So that means like protected bicycle and pedestrian thoroughfares, safe refuges, basically every single crosswalk, and that sort. And on the continuation of that, talking about AC5, analysis of trunk line transfer from MDOT to Ann Arbor. I'm sure the council members have all read the report. But basically, Ann Arbor and MDOT have conflicting perspectives on how we should treat our roads. And I really hope that the city council looks at this deeply and hopes to try to figure something out. Similar to Kalamazoo, who had the same issue, so they took over the roads, and they're trying to make the roads better for people. And in Ann Arbor, we have that vision. We have Vision Zero, we have A20, we have all these goals, and we have the ability to go through with them. And so if we take over the trunk lines, like Huron, Washtenaw, that street, for example, or North Main, for example, we can reach our goals. And that falls into the same category as like the walk sheds for kids, because if you ever tried to cross Huron, on like Huron State, for example, if you ever try to cross that intersection, it's terrifying. And I have like dozens and dozens of friends who live in those towers over there. It's just not a fun place to cross the streets. You're crossing high-speed traffic with no traffic calming, and it's something that we can do something about. And so I think I really want to see the city council take action on making Ann Arbor a safe place to walk and bike, and just use the roads as a human being, use the roads as a 5 to 10-year-old. And I think that we're making good progress. We should continue to make good progress. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Caller with the phone number ending in 134, do you have a comment?
Yeah, thanks. This is Ken Garber, 28 Haverhill Court. Thank you for your hard work. Just a quick correction on the Barton Green Student Housing Project, 2601 Pontiac Trail, now known as The One. This came up in tonight's site plan review thresholds discussion. If I heard correctly, a council member stated that this was one of the few projects where City Council overruled Planning Commission approval, leading to a lawsuit. This is not correct. In fact, Planning Commission voted to reject the project by a 7-2 vote in May 2018, and City Council then voted unanimously 10-0 against it. So both Planning Commission and Council rejected the project. Thanks, minor point. Just wanted to correct the record.
Thank you.
Caller with the phone number ending in 546, do you have a comment? Go
Hello,
ahead.
this is Tom Stahlberg. Tom Stahlberg again, calling from Lower Town. Couple of points to make. In terms of Republican versus Democrat, I don't think that the label is as important as the policy. Our current so-called progressive Ann Arbor Democrats are practicing classic Republican deregulation and trickle-down housing policies. If you want to create a job, you give money to the rich and hope that they make some jobs. That was Reagan-era voodoo economics, supply-side economics, trickle-down economics, whatever label you slap on it. We saw that that didn't work. Maybe a factory owner invested in automation and reduced jobs. Who got the benefit of the efficiencies? The owner, the shareholders, not the labor force. It didn't work as intended. So we are doing the same thing in Ann Arbor in our housing policies, creating a TC1, which is a poor excuse for transit-oriented development, doing it without a comprehensive plan review, revision, which would have included the community, and perhaps we would have put some kind of more conditional, incentivized things to create affordable housing, to create sustainability. These buildings aren't going to be required to be sustainable in any way. They could have been. It could have been built into, you want X height or density or other features, you have to provide some affordable housing as a percentage. We do that in our code. That could have been done. It wasn't done. If we had the comprehensive plan revision process, that might have come from the community, but we skipped that step. So what we have is deregulation, reducing the oversight of council, reducing the participation of citizens, and we have trickle-down policies. Let's let the wealthy landholders have extra wealth that we are creating for them by an upzoning, and not ask in the policy itself, in the zoning itself, for a direct contribution to our community goals.
30 seconds.
So one more thing I'd like to ask for, this has been asked for before, since the city is initiating the rezoning of the TC1 parcels, 69 parcels, the citizens would like to know who the owners are. And we said it before, not just the LLCs listed on the tax roll. You can go to the website, I go to the state law, look up who is the person who filed the papers for the LLC. But it's the city who's initiating this rezoning 69 parcels, increasing the wealth of those owners. So we'd like to know, us citizens, for accountability and transparency reasons, who are the names behind those LLCs? You could do the homework, don't make us do it.
Fine.
Please.
Thank you.
Caller with the phone number ending in 340, do you have a comment?
Yes, greetings, Ann Arbor City Council and Mr. Mayor. Thank you for the opportunity to speak in public comment once again. My name is Luis Vasquez. I'm a resident of the First Ward. Firstly, I would like to thank Stephen Postema for his service to the city of Ann Arbor for many years. Even though perhaps I didn't always agree with him on many issues, I think he has served this city in a great capacity. In fact, according to FOIA that I filed a few years ago, FOIA number 1980, Stephen Postema has survived attacks from Tom Weeder, an out-of-town attorney who has sued Ann Arbor a number of times for many reasons. So kudos to you, Stephen Postema, for surviving that, along with, well, maybe not along with your coworker, Howard Lazarus, who was also targeted by out-of-town attorney Tom Weeder years ago. But yeah, kudos to you for surviving that. In regards to DC4 tonight, thank you for passing the resolution, but what I would like to see kept is the ability for public comment to be given, by this medium. I think it's great because I cannot always attend city council meetings, but I do have, many opportunities and many times where I would like to comment, but in the past I have not. Before COVID, I would have to sit through an entire council meeting, sometimes lasting to the wee hours of the morning, before I could make some kind of public comment, unless I had gone
30 seconds.
online before. Gone beforehand. But thank you, City Council. I hope we keep the ability to comment publicly online or on these venues. I would hope we would do that in perpetuity. Thank you.
Thank you.
Caller with the phone number ending in 779, do you have a comment?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. My name is Z. St. James from Answer Detroit. That stands for a network of sex workers to excite revolution. We are a peer-led organization that advocates on behalf of the rights of sex workers and other people in the sex trade. Although we are based in the Detroit area, we're involved in efforts on the state and national levels and have members who are Ann Arbor constituents, as well as members who work and go to school in Ann Arbor. I believe one of our members reached out to Councilman Radina on this issue. So this comment is about the disorderly conduct ordinance being updated. We would like both the ordinances on prostitution, including the language around solicitation, struck down or removed in order to make our lives and the lives of our families and communities safer. We are in a housing crisis. People are struggling financially, and the amount of public space we have available is rapidly shrinking due to the pandemic. It leaves the most vulnerable open to being profiled as soliciting. And although Answer commends Prosecutor Ali Savitt on his policy to not bring charges for adult consensual sex work, we need to remove the city ordinance to ensure the safety of populations most vulnerable to racist and transphobic profiling and police violence. Amending this ordinance is a tangible way we could prioritize the rights and safety of transgender residents, houseless residents, and any other residents profiled as soliciting simply for taking up public space, while we continue to work to make sure that everyone in Ann Arbor has what they need to survive. Answer urges council to remove parts of the ordinance mentioning prostitution and commercial sex. It also needs more work to get rid of parts that continue to criminalize poverty. Taxpayer funds used for the enforcement of these ordinances can then be diverted into the programs local sex working communities are asking for, such as non-police crisis response and non-punitive voluntary services from trusted service providers who are trauma-informed around our lived experiences of systemic violence. Thank you.
Thank you.
Caller with the phone number ending in 556, do you have a comment?
Hi, Ralph McKee, Fifth Ward, speaking for the second time. I have a comment back to Councilmember Grant. I congratulate you on your chutzpah. If you can, if you're that proud of voting with colleagues 98% of the time, that's fine, but how anybody could possibly square that with independent thinking is beyond belief. That's past Mitch McConnell. Now we're into the land of George Orwell doublespeak. As to the elimination of site plan and lowering costs for developers, I believe that developers these days in a hot demand market like this one, it's not cost plus. They're not charging that way. They're not pricing that way. They're pricing based on what the market will bear. So what you're doing is just increasing their profit margin. That's all you're doing. It's not going to lower pricing at all. You're just giving them more money. There may be some projects on the border where it's not quite rich enough that maybe will get built where they wouldn't get built before. You're increasing their profit margin from, I don't know, 21 to 23% or something. That there might be that incremental value, but to actually think you're getting more than that is borderline delusional. As to the Salvatore reports and so on, you've received the critiques I've made before, and I would encourage you to read them again. This report may fill in the gaps that were in the first one that you're just releasing now. Maybe her conclusions could certainly be correct now that maybe she's filled in the gap and done the due diligence that should have been done the first time. That's certainly possible, and I'll read it with interest. But that doesn't mean the first report was good. It wasn't. I know her reputation. That was not quality work. I've shown it to numerous other lawyers that practice in that field. They came to the same conclusion that I did, that report was severely flawed. The second report was severely flawed too. Maybe this one will be great. I'll be happy to review it. Thank you very much, and good night.
Thank you.
Caller with the phone number ending in 604, do you have a comment?
Yeah, hi, Eric Lipson again from the 4th Ward. I'd like to say that I've known Stephen Postema for almost the entire time he's been the city attorney, and many times we've been on opposite sides of the fence as far as litigation goes, and I've always found Stephen to be an honorable, competent, and respectful litigator, and is reflected especially by the competent staff who he has hired and retained over the period of his tenure there. So I know that this is an unfortunate reason he has the family reason he's leaving, but and I wish him well. And also, as far as the question of overlap, I think in general it is very, very helpful to have some overlap between an outgoing and an ingoing person. And this sounds like it's somewhat open-ended, and that's fine. When the new attorney, who, by the way, I think is one thing this committee, or I should say the board, can agree to is that, or council, is that this new city attorney, the incoming person, is generally respected, and I think it's a great hire, and I think that's something you can agree on. But I also think this overlap is important, and even if she decides that she agrees or disagrees with some of the current policies, she'll know what they are. And finally, the one other thing I'd like to talk about, and I know this is coming up in a public forum soon, which has to do with how the city should spend the stimulus money coming from the federal government. And one of the reasons I bring it up is I was just at the drop-off station, which is operated by Recycle Ann Arbor, and it is a shameful facility. I must say that the staff at Recycle Ann Arbor have diligently attempted to keep that place in order inside the shed where they recycle a lot of materials. It was absolutely spotlessly clean. But the grounds are not even paved. It was a mud pit. The place is, as I say, is really, it requires a little attention, either a relocation or maybe another one. But if you're hoping to be, in fact, to put your money where your mouth is regarding recycling and making people a facility where people are going to want to go, you got to put some money in that. And that place has been horribly neglected by the city in its budget. So I would really hope that you would do that and direct some funds to that. I've been to rural townships in Ontario with a population of 8,000 that had a paved recycle collection facility. And so the city of Ann Arbor can do better. If you want to really be a leader in the area regarding recycling and to help Recycle Ann Arbor, because they're trying their hearts out over there. But the facility itself is sorely lacking, and we could use a lot of upgrade or at a different location that is more centrally located. Anyway, thanks very much for allowing me to speak. This is such a precious freedom that we have in our fragile democracy, and I appreciate what all of you do. So have a good night.
Thank you.
Caller with the phone number ending in 684, do you have a comment?
Yes, hi, this is Eric Sturgis from Ward 1. Happy holidays. I just wanted
to call and thank Councilmember Nelson for her newsletter and putting out that voting chart. And I appreciated Councilmember Graham's comments in the paper about counting the votes. And my comment was, I really appreciate Councilmember Medina responding to a citizen in the 3rd Ward when he addressed the fact that Councilmember Medina was on his porch and said he was not part of the slate. And Councilmember Medina proceeded to give a very good answer, but he said he was disappointed with the blogger. And I would encourage him to be disappointed with the person who said that he was part of a slate and implied that he was part of a slate, because, you know, the numbers are backing up what the blogger said, and she, in my opinion, was relying on what another council member, a well-respected council member, Mayor Pro Tem, said. So I think we just have to remember that, you know, words have consequences, and, you know, I think, you know, the voters, if you're part of a slate, that's not a problem. Just say, hey, I'm part of a slate. This is how I feel. So just, you know, a little bit of feedback from how I and other people looked at it. And again, I want to thank Councilmember Nelson for that.
Thank you.
Brandon Dimchef, do you have a comment?
Yeah, hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right. Hi, I'm Brandon Dimchef from the 4th Ward. I just want to echo everyone's thanks to Mr. Postema for his service to the city, and also thank council for coming to work under these less than ideal situation. Since it seems unlikely that the state is going to let council go back to remote meetings in the short term anyways, I highly recommend looking into better respiratory protection than is provided by cloth and surgical masks, particularly while we have this Omicron situation. One good way to do this is by going to projectn95.org and getting your hands on an N95 or KN95. I saw that some of you have them already, I think. But they provide a lot better protection for you and for others from transmitting COVID. So check that out, and I'm happy to help if you have trouble finding them. Thanks. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Adam Goodman, do you have a comment?
Yeah, hi. I'm a resident of 5th Ward, and in particular, I live near the West Huron and Jackson corridor, which is why I was really excited to see this memo show up about the city evaluating potentially transferring ownership from MDOT of those roads as well as a couple others. The road diet on Jackson Avenue between Dexter and Maple was completed, as if I'm recalling correctly, in 2015, so almost 7 years ago, and yet it is still to this day the case that there is not a single crosswalk or safe place to cross that road between Dexter and Maple, which is a 0.7 mile stretch. You know, in the city of Ann Arbor, we don't always agree with each other on the best ways to do pedestrian safety improvements, but I think crosswalks, the need for crosswalks is actually quite uncontroversial. I think we all agree on that. I mean, well-lit, yeah, safe, well-marked safe crosswalks, of course, but crosswalks. So I'm certain that if the city had ownership of that road over the last 7 years, this problem would have already been solved, but it's not. So, you know, I think I've seen that there's finally some progress, and MDOT is willing to deign to allow us to have a discussion about this, and maybe in a few more years it'll finally get done. But I think this is just a great example of what we lose by not having control of these roads within our own jurisdiction. And, you know, there's so much more that we could do with that MDOT will probably not even consider. So I really hope that the city takes this idea seriously. And yeah, I didn't expect to hear about this. So again, I'm just really excited that this might be on the table. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor, I don't see any other callers on the line with their hands up.
Seeing no one, public comment is closed. Are there further communications from council? Councilmember Ramlawi.
Thank you. I just wanted to first say thanks to all the speakers who called in and spoke tonight. Whether you're a supporter or a critic, I do appreciate the perspectives that the public provides, and this new format provides for greater input. I just wanted to talk a little bit about my vote for B1, the ordinance to amend section 5.22.3. And I knew during the first round of discussions I said I would support it. But then listening to others and thinking about it and trying to be as principled and consistent as I possibly can, in the end I voted against it. I voted against it because the pattern that this council has had in reducing the accountability and oversight to its constituents and abdicating the responsibility and the voice that we have for our residents and for our constituents. And I supported the original resolution that directed staff to look at ways to streamline the process. But eventually what we got back was one step too far in ways that I could not in the end support. So I believe that there was some process improvements that needed to happen to streamline things, but ultimately a full deregulation and a gift to developers in the hopes, once again, that it's going to be benevolent. They're going to be benevolent and give those profits and profit margins back to the community is something that I've never seen in my life. So in the end, I had to say no, and that is independent thinking, independent voting. Thank you.
Councilmember Dish.
Thank you. I wanted to respond. I think it's legitimate to do that to two callers. I wanted to acknowledge that I misread Legistar regarding the one. And in fact, I misread it even against my own memory, which was that Planning Commission had rejected that. So thank you for that correction. I take that correction. And I wanted to say to Mr. Lipset, I think it was the caller who mentioned the condition of the drop-off station. I believe it was last meeting. I reported at the beginning that city staff had applied to and won an $800,000 grant from the state of Michigan to make a lot of improvements at the drop-off station. So I'm with you, Mr. Lipset, and there is good news coming our way with that.
Councilmember Radina.
Thank you. Thanks to my colleagues for their earlier acquiescence and allowing me to make some remarks about my friend Jim. But because of that, I wanted to make sure I followed up with some additional council comments. For those members of the public who are still with us, Councilmember Grand and I are having a Ward 3 virtual coffee hour on January 9th at 4 p.m. I have advertised that online, but if you are not on Facebook, if you don't otherwise have access to the link, feel free to email either one of us and we can make sure to provide it to you. And then I also just wanted to briefly call attention to two resolutions from the Energy Commission on the clerk's report to any of my colleagues who may have overlooked it in reviewing the agenda. The resolutions we talked about last meeting about a recommendation on exploring a municipalization feasibility study, and then also a resolution praising the DDA for their work towards decarbonization are on there. And so I just wanted to draw your attention to those as well. Thanks.
Further communication from council. Councilmember Griswold.
I want to once again thank Stephen Postema for his hiring practices, and it was really a miracle that we were able to bring Milton Dehoney to Ann Arbor. And so the disagreement I have is really with process. It's not with the person. And so sometimes I get emotional. I want to explain that. I also want to point out that I think we need to, in the future, make sure that when we're using terms like facts and allegations, we're using them appropriately, because allegations don't turn into facts on their own. And the third thing is good news, and that is the University of Michigan is going to be doing a master plan of North Campus, and I have been talking to staff and regents about the need for more workforce housing, particularly on the North Campus. The University of Michigan continues to increase its enrollment, continues to increase staffing at the hospital and at the university. And that probably puts more pressure on the housing market than anything in Ann Arbor. And so I'll be bringing a resolution forward in the near future asking staff to work with the University of Michigan to come up with a plan. I've called it 2,000 units of workforce housing, but staff's welcome to give it another name. To date, the University of Michigan has been receptive. No one has said no. They've just said, please share more details with me. So I'm hoping that the University of Michigan will move forward like many other universities have in providing housing for staff members. Thank you.
Further communication from council. May I have a motion to adjourn, please? Moved by Councilmember Griswold, seconded by Councilmember Nelson. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? We are adjourned. Mr. Dehoney, Ms. Beaudry, Mr. Postma, thank you.